strong in my family. My father hasn't. I have it. My sister has it. You have that power too.
Hello and welcome to episode 12 of We'll Review It Ourselves, the podcast where we review the movies on our shelves. Every 2 weeks we'll take a randomly selected movie from our collection and we'll review it ourselves. I'm Brian Morgan and on the West Coast is...
Dan Bergman.
And joining us for this very special episode where we will be discussing Star Wars The Force Awakens is my lovely wife Christy.
Hi.
Hello.
So, this is our 12th episode. I think everyone knows what we do. So, let's just jump right into it. I'll ask the question. Dan, how did this get on your shelf?
You know, Brian, I've known you a very long time, and I love and respect you, but damn, that's a dumb question. How could this not be on my shelf? You know who I am. You know what I'm about.
I know that, but our listeners might not know you, so why don't you tell them that?
I don't... Really? Do you think they by episode 12? Yeah, okay, maybe not. I suppose if this is the first one, then... My mom took me to see Star Wars when I was 5, back in 1977. Pretty much that's one of those things where it's just like, boom, that was it. That's all she wrote. Next thing I know, I had all 12 of the original Star Wars figures. I was reciting lines. I was playing Jawa, and shooting R2-D2 and everything. I mean, that was it, On the sadder note, it was the main reason, like bullies need a reason, but it was one of the reasons why I was bullied a lot in school. It's like, yeah, the Star Wars nerd, man, it's like, get him, it's like... But it never deterred me from being a Star Wars lover, so when Episode 7 came out, I'm like, they're finally doing it! I owned it before it even came out in theaters.
That sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah.
Like it may be a thing that occurred on this end as well. So I am going to ask the question because that's what we do on this show, is we ask the question. But I'm going to defer to Christy, and she can tell the story of how this got onto our shelf. So, Christy, how did this movie get on our shelf?
I bought it. Because it's obvious.
Because I was broke that day, and I wanted...
No, he was at work, so it was a given. I was going to the store and buying it. Because, like Brian, I am a huge Star Wars fan. I, too, remember going to the movies when I was younger, and it was one of my favorite movies. It still is my favorite movie. It was one of my best memories as a child, and I could recite lines from it. I even had a record from the first movie. I played it nonstop. My mother, it made her crazy. But I had a Star Wars cake, I had all the figures on it, just everything. So this was a given. It was going to be coming home with us. No questions asked. So yeah, he didn't even get a chance to ask, did we have it? It was already here.
2 things real quick. I want to add my own little piece to that since we're talking about Star Wars history. I was hoping that I could save it for the Star Wars episode when we eventually get to that. But when I went to Star Wars in my hometown, my mom took me to the theater and we started in mid-movie. So I saw the last half of Star Wars before I saw the first half of Star Wars.
Huh.
And that was just the way it happened. I don't know. I don't even to this day know how it is that we missed the timing on that. And the theater was kind enough to let us sit through the break while they cleaned up. And then the movie restarted later, so we, got to see the first half of the movie.
Those were the days, weren't they?
Yeah.
Even if you saw the whole movie, if you wanted to sit down and wait for it to play again, there were theaters that let you. That just say, "Hey, you sticking around? Yeah, okay. Let me sweep around you," and that was it. And you saw Star Wars a second time.
Yep. So, I have been a Star Wars fan since I was young, and the other thing that I wanted to point out is if you notice, when Christy was telling her own Star Wars story, she very conveniently said, when I was younger, and didn't give an age when Star Wars came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I wasn't going to say anything. Even though I've got like 2,500 miles of safety zone.
I have about maybe 2 feet, so
yeah.
I am merely pointing it out. I am not going to mention an age
Okay,
myself.
We'll just leave it at I was the oldest
Of the three of us.
of the group here today.
Yeah, and since Nina couldn't make it today, for our listeners, Nina was going to join us. She's younger than Dan, so so Christy still wins by default.
Yay.
Yeah, her, just on her behalf, her Star Wars story is that she had never seen the movies until she was with me. And I just, for the record, I started out properly. I started on episode 4, 5, and 6.
God bless you. I
Thank
was
you.
hoping that you would not commit the sacrilege.
And then, she said she liked them. She wasn't quite the uber fan that we were, but she said she really liked them. And then, I showed her episode 1, 2, and 3. So even though they're different opinion, I'm not going to say one way or the other, but...
Right.
Yeah, save that for the episodes.
She did enjoy them and said that, they were pretty good and, gave her deeper sense of the story and everything.
Cool.
And she really liked episode 7. And she hates it when I mention it, but she really thinks Adam Driver is hot in this movie, so I'll let that be said.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, all right then.
I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go that far, so.
You didn't think he was hot in this movie?
No.
So the
Sorry.
Kylo Ren costume is right out.
Yeah, no Kylo Ren costume, sorry.
Okay. May or may not make it into the final episode. I'm just letting you know. All right, so we are trying something a little bit different this time because we were expecting a few more people. Well, okay, one more person. But because we have obviously shown that we have such a significant emotional investment in Star Wars as longtime fans, to keep the conversation sort of focused, we're going to discuss 3 likes, 3 dislikes, and then we're going to ask 3 questions about specifically Star Wars The Force Awakens. So, in honor of our guest, Christy, what is your first like?
My first like, I would have to say, is the fact that Rey is very strong female character. Even when Finn was trying to, quote unquote, rescue her, she kept saying, "Stop holding my hand." I liked that. She was very independent. She was like, "I got this." I liked that fact. That was before she even understood anything about the Force, anything. I appreciated that she could do things by herself, and I think that's a very good thing for girls. I know growing up, Princess Leia was a huge influence for me, so I think this is a new Leia for the younger generation, which I appreciate.
That was going to be my exact like as well. My first
sorry,
like.
I stole it.
No, not absolutely. I'm actually kind of glad you brought it up and everything. And it's just I just want to say that and exactly that same thing. She was not the damsel in distress. I mean, even when Finn took it upon himself, not in a malicious way or like, "Oh, thank goodness I'm saving you" type of manner.
Right.
He was just a matter of fact. "Here, come with me" and everything, and she was just like, "Stop holding my hand."
And then after the 3rd time, it became her reaching out to him to give him her hand. And it was more of a supporting thing as opposed to like what you guys are talking about, the follow me, we're going this way. One of the things that brings up is representation. And I know I'd written that down in my notes as a thing that I had maybe wanted to ask a question about. But since we're covering it in a like, I do want to kind of ask the question, is it important to have that representation?
If it's just out there, I'm just going to answer absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of people like to dismiss representation in films, and they like to say, well, it's just a movie, or it's just sci-fi, or everything. But if it was just a movie, if it was just anything, not to get too far off the subject, and it's just that I don't like it when people use the word "just" in a description. When you're just because everybody used to say you're just a paramedic or you're just a nurse. It's a method of demeaning the thing or person you are describing. So when you say it's just a movie, no, it's not just a movie. This is an artistic expression that is a reflection on our society. To say that, representation is not important because it's just a movie, then why were there so many codes in the past where you couldn't represent certain people? It's like I was watching this bit of cinema history about this. There was only one Asian American woman actress at the time who was had a height of fame, but she wasn't allowed to be in a movie because her co-star would have been white, and Hollywood had a strict code: you could not portray interracial marriage. Well, if it was just a movie and representation was not a thing, then why would they have that rule? Obviously, it was a thing. It is a thing. So yeah, it's incredibly important to have that kind of representation. It's incredibly important that you have a diverse cast.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that.
I agree too. I was just asking the question because I know during our Tu Wong Fu episode we had discussed representation. Was that? I think it was that episode.
It was definitely a heavy part of that podcast.
Right. And I think one of the things that I had said was I don't care about the race or gender or orientation of the characters. It makes no difference to me. Tell me a good story. And that's an aspect. But on the flip side, and going along with exactly what the two of you are saying, is the representation piece is important. If you're not representing all aspects of society, like this movie does, and like other movies have done before that, then you're not representing what we truly are, which goes to the artistic expression and goes to what Christy had said earlier about when she was growing up. Princess Leia was a hero of hers and had a tremendous influence on her, but there were limited female heroes to choose from, and that goes along the way for black actors and Asian actors like you were talking about. There just weren't that many. We can talk about Ripley from Alien and Princess Leia and really spin that up and say there have been some, but Star Wars, this movie, making that a part of it and telling a good story while not hammering it home, she's a girl, like, look, she's a girl doing stuff. I'm probably not explaining that as eloquently as I had hoped.
But I also like it because she's not the only one. And that's a constant theme in there. She's just one of the many heroes in the whole thing. It's not just a one-woman show like, hey, I'm saving the day every time. And I appreciate that. As part of the teamwork, I like that theme as well because it's a good representation of how you work together and you end up with a good result.
And it gives little girls like Christy a person to relate to. And I know I'm going slightly off topic, not necessarily with Star Wars The Force Awakens, but San Diego Comic-Con, there was a little girl that walked up to Gal Gadot dressed as Wonder Woman, and to have something like that, where little girls can be the hero and not have to say, oh, well, I'm going to be Luke Skywalker. You can't be Luke Skywalker. You're a girl. To have them have a hero of their own that is a girl that they can relate to, that's powerful stuff. And I think that this movie does that very well.
Yeah, just to add to that, it's like, and to kind of continue what I was saying about, representation, when you have the naysayers that like to dismiss how important the role models are in popular culture and in movies. Again, off subject, but, harken back to the days, the Second World War, when you had all these, bravado war movies. If they had absolutely zero effect on bolstering the morale, then yeah, I'd understand the argument that, representation doesn't mean anything. But no, these guys were representing what American idealism was. We're going to go fight the Nazis, we're going to go win the war, and we're going to do it proudly and everything. Right there, that's an example of role models in movies. So when you get somebody who, when they talk about, it's like, well, we want to see more people like us, we want to see more women, we want to see more black people or Asians or whatnot represented positively in movies, and people say, well, what difference does that make? Get over it. I bring that up. I bring up World War II. If those movies didn't mean anything, then you have an argument, but you don't.
Fair enough. So, Dan, what is your first like?
Well, I said, I agreed with her. That was my first like. It was on my list, was that, Rey was not a damsel in distress. She was a strong character who not only was, she wasn't weak and found strength. She was strong and found a bigger strength.
Okay.
I think, and the thing I liked about it, though, too, is that she had a complexity about her that you don't see a lot in female characters either.
One of the things that I noted was she doesn't say anything for the first 3 to 5 minutes that she's in the movie. Nothing. You just see her in the Star Destroyer scavenging around, and then you see her dragging her materials that she had scavenged.
Salvage.
Yeah, her salvage. And then you see her driving, and then you see her cleaning up the parts. And she looks over at the old lady who is also scrubbing her parts. And you see, and this is a testament to Daisy Ridley and her acting ability, you just see that wash over her face of, this is what I'm going to become, that resignation. And then you see it flash back up to, no, that's not who I'm going to be. I've got a purpose or something. You see something inside her change her look so that she is not as resigned as she was a second ago, and I like that. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Well, that whole thing that you mentioned, the where she doesn't talk, this is where you really see masterful filmmaking, where this is show me and not tell me who this person is.
Yeah.
We saw what she does. We saw what her life consisted of and what she was willing to accept. The tick marks on her wall showed us how long she's been there and how long she's been doing what she's been doing. Show me in movies is more potent than tell me. To contrast that, you look at Rogue One, where you have a relatively equal female lead when it comes to power and strength and everything like that. But that one was a tell me who she is. I mean, yeah, they snatched her out of a prison. They listed off a set of charges, the things that she did. Not as powerful. Okay, yeah, she's got a, kind of a criminal history, but, all right, so what? Let's get to the story type of thing. Very stark contrast. Not to say one was, that one was worse, but just different.
Right.
Oh, no, yeah, they're just different. So my first like, and this is not in a particular order of like preference, but just shifting the conversation away a little bit. One of the things that I loved about this movie more than liked is that John Williams did the score again. That is one of the things that I've always loved about Star Wars is the music. And to have the same composer do all 7 films in the 2 trilogies and now the third one is just tremendous, and it keeps the same feel and the swell of the Force music when Rey was reaching for the lightsaber and it flew past Kylo Ren and into her hand, and you hear the familiar strains from the old movies, but it's just turned a little bit more to make it newer. That grabs you right where you sit and says, hey, pay attention, this is a continuation of the movies that you've seen and loved for 30 some odd years.
I can be on board with that light, very much so. And it's funny that you mentioned the scene where she snatches the lightsaber with the Force, it goes past Kylo's head and into her hands. That was kind of a powerful scene for me. It really hit me in the feels. I mean, a bit of the nostalgia and whatnot, but the funny thing is, and here's one of those things, this may be nothing, this may be something, but the piece, the familiar, like you were talking about familiarity, the piece that's playing when she has the saber in her hand and that powerful crescendo unleashes, do you know where that first played in the original trilogy?
Wasn't it when they were making the Death Star run?
No.
No.
If you look back, No.
Tesla disagrees
Good job,
with
Tesla.
you. No, she was saying no, not the Death Star. No.
Oh,
Not the Death
okay.
Star. That's right.
It was when Luke found his burning farmstead and his dead aunt and uncle.
It's the Lucas sad music.
That was not the Lucas sad music.
Yes, it
No, the
is.
Lucas sad music is when he was staring off into the twin sun's setting.
You are right. When he comes home and finds his home burning, that's the same music. I know. I just watched it again yesterday.
I just watched it again today, and I'm still not placing it, so that's okay. I watched it while you were at work,
Oh, sorry.
and you were wondering why the dishes didn't get done.
But anyways, making that connection, looking back, after that was when Luke made the decision that, okay, I'm leaving. I'll go with you to Alderaan. I'll want to learn the ways of the Force. Could that be the connection that may be when Rey decided, okay,
Yeah.
I think I understand what's happening. You know, the changes going on in my head.
And it's time to go and learn the ways of the Force.
Exactly.
Yeah, I kind of took that meaning from that scene as well, from the very beginning, when it flew past Kylo Ren into her hand, and the look on her face was like, to me, that was the resignation for her that this is my destiny now, the ways of the Force, this is where I'm going with this. But to put it musically as well adds just another layer.
I'm not sure that I agree.
Okay.
Well, that's okay. You can
No,
disagree, but that's
no.
fine.
No, and I'm okay with that. I'm just trying to think in that piece. I don't know that when it flies out into her hand. I'm not arguing about the music because quite frankly, I don't remember. I remember the scene you're talking about in A New Hope, but I don't remember the music. But from the realization that she was going to have to go learn the ways of the Force, I don't know, because there's a point in that duel with Kylo Ren where they're going to town and he has her on defense and he's pushing down with his blade, and she's got her arm up and holding it, the lightsaber basically across her forehead, and he says, "You need a teacher. I can teach you the ways of the Force." And she says, "Oh, the Force. That's right." And then you see her calm down and move to the Force. So I think maybe it was the Inklings, but I don't think that she really moved into that until later on in the fight.
I kind of understand what you're saying, but I think she knows that the lightsaber has chosen her and that there is a purpose for the lightsaber choosing her. But I think because she doesn't understand the ways of the Force and how to work with it, I feel like she got lost in the heat of the battle, and then all of a sudden he reminds her by saying this, the Force, and she's like, oh yeah, that's right, the Force. And then she let herself go and feel that moment, and that's where that came in. So I feel like because some of it was the rawness and the newness for her, that the heat of the battle kind of took over for her. That's more my feeling on that.
Okay.
No, I think that she's a little closer to how I was thinking about that too. Because I mean, you can discover, you know, okay, I want to learn. Okay, forgive me for the analogy, but this is off the top of my head. I really want to learn hockey, and you know, you make the realization, I want to learn everything, but you can still stumble on the ice. You can still like that until something clicks, and then you're like, oh yeah, okay, glide on the ice, nice soft movements, be calm. What she was describing is, you know, she she grabs a lightsaber, says, okay, I want to do the Force, and then she's like, say, in the heat of the battle, I'm just gonna beat this guy with this lightsaber club or whatever. But then when he says you need a teacher, that little thing that clicks in her head, it's like, oh yeah, you know, there is actually a way to use this thing called the Force.
And I think that throughout her life, and let's set aside her lineage for just a moment, because I'm sure that will come up in the conversation at some point. If no one else brings it up, I will. But
the big debate in our house.
Yeah. But I think that she was previously trained in the Force, and then her mind was wiped or reprogrammed a little bit by someone strong in the Force, and she was isolated. I think we'll probably find that out in the next movie. Just guessing.
Yeah.
But I think as the movie went along, her ability to access the Force became stronger and stronger, and I think that rationalizes the perceived quickness with which she used the Force and was able to, you know, use that old Jedi mind trick and then to access it for the lightsaber battle. So I wonder if maybe that scene was not about her realization of that's what she was going to do, but perhaps the inkling of the that's what I used to do, and now I'm sort of realizing that those memories are in there and they're at least partially accessible.
That's an interesting thought.
That's one way of looking at it. Yeah, it's like, I guess as more evidence comes out in the later movies.
Yeah, that's something we'll have to know. I mean, but I think some of it is a little bit because, you know, Snoke says there has been an awakening. So is that maybe what he's saying? Or is it just that she's awoken to the possibility that she is a Force user? So we don't know.
Not yet. But hey, real quick, I finally got my apparatus to work, just for comparative purposes. But this is the music from Episode 4, when Luke finds his burning homestead.
There it is, right there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yep.
And then, hold on, comes the crescendo.
Yeah, but that music is used a lot throughout the entire movie.
Was it?
Yeah, that particular theme is used a lot.
Show me. Find another scene, because then here is where Kylo Ren is trying to get the saber.
Yeah. On the Wikipedia, the piece is called Binary Sunset, or the Force theme is the colloquial term. Said it was introduced in Episode 4, A New Hope, when Princess Leia gives R2-D2 the Death Star plans, but its most prominent inclusion was in the scenes where Luke Skywalker gazes out to the twin suns of Tatooine. Later in the film, the theme plays as Luke comes upon his burning homestead and when a TIE fighter chases him during the battle over the Death Star. So we were all actually right.
Okay. See, we were yeah. We refer to it always as the Lucas sad music around
Right,
here.
right, yeah.
Because it always plays when Luke is sad.
Okay, well that's the soft part. And that's the thing, though. I'm not talking about the sad part, the part where he walks up to it.
Right,
and,
right.
That's the same
But
as the
yeah.
binary sunset when Leia gives him all that. I'm talking about that crescendo of the horns. That bum bum bum. That's not part of the. That wasn't part of the binary sunset. It just sort of faded out.
But the whole musical theme is prevalent in all of those scenes.
Right.
They don't put things in these movies for nothing. There are no.
Oh yeah. No,
coincidences.
there are musical themes.
There's a meaning to that, and I'd love to see what that's about.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see where they go with it.
Which is funny because we're going into territory which comes up to actually 2 of my 3 questions. So I don't know if you want to do those now or wait.
Let's wait on that, and then what I want to do is move on to Christy's second like.
Okay, my second like is Finn. I like that he's just socially awkward. The poor kid was kidnapped when he was young, trained, and he's just awkward as all get out. I like that he has no social skills. Like when he's talking to Han Solo and he keeps doing the nodding his head thing. What's this? What's this? What's this? He doesn't have a clue how to deal with people or socially relate to people. I really kind of appreciated that part of his character. He's still awkward.
And in all of the conversations that we have had in our home regarding this movie, I don't know that I've ever actually heard you say those words in that order before, and I must say, I liked Finn beforehand, but you actually make me look at him in a different way, and I like him even more now.
Well, good, because I like that he's weird and awkward, and I look forward to seeing how he develops in the future, but I liked that, he didn't understand how to interact with other people on an actual personal level versus just being a stormtrooper.
Yeah, it's funny, man. You and I must be like on the same wavelength and everything. Because my second like is not so much that he was awkward, but how he rose above that. And actually, my notes I jotted down. It was like the initial thing that I put is that I like how Finn stepped up. So to expand on your, how socially awkward he is. Where he started out that way, like not knowing what was going on. How to deal with the world around him, because this is the first time he's independent, he's free, no idea what he's doing, but by the end of the movie, now he's faced with somebody that he knows could easily kill him.
Yeah.
But he took that lightsaber and he stepped up and he stood his ground. And to me, that was probably the as far as any Star Wars film, that's probably the single most powerful act of courage ever displayed in these films.
Right, I like that. I kind of compared his act of courage like that in a way to Obi-Wan Kenobi. He knew he was not going to be able to beat Darth Vader back in the day, but he knew he had to do this. But I think this was even more so because Obi-Wan knew what was going to happen after his death. But Finn has no clue. He just knows, I got to do this whether I die or not. I got to do it.
And that goes to what he said in the movie, because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that I liked, that made me care for Finn as a character, because he was doing it because it was the right thing to do. You could see the struggle. You could see he didn't want to be where he was, fighting the First Order. He just wanted to get away. And then when he was put in the position where he had an opportunity to get away, he chose the right thing to do, and that was not to run away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing when you were saying about him wanting to run. I mean, that was the potency, though. The show me, where that scene in where Maz Kanata has that conversation with him and states that, you know, when you live as long as I have, you start to see the same eyes in different people. And right now I see somebody who wants to run. That was the confirmation that, you know, yeah, he wasn't just making this up. This is his honest, no BS assessment. I want to run. I want to get out of here. You know. So when he decided to make the decision to stay, you know that was a very powerful decision.
I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah.
Does that cover your second like?
That was my second like, yeah.
Wow. I feel kind of awkward, but I like what you guys are saying, and I don't want to confuse that with what I'm picking as my likes, because as Christy will attest, I have a page and a half of likes, so I'm sort of going through and filtering what you guys are saying and going, okay, well, we've covered that. So my second like is seeing X-Wings, TIE Fighters, and the Millennium Falcon flying in atmosphere dynamically, not just taking off to go into space, because in space, it's all 3 dimensions, and you can go up, down, left, right, sideways, and all that kind of stuff. But when you're on the ground, and particularly in that first scene with the Millennium Falcon, when they are zooming along the ground, you actually see the Millennium Falcon for the ship that she was always purported to be, the fastest hunk of junk in the galaxy. You see it juking left and cutting right and dodging and bobbing and weaving, and you can only go up or you can go left and right. You can't go down, because if you go any farther down, you're in the dirt. So that was an interesting aspect that I don't think we had really seen a whole lot of in any of the previous Star Wars movies.
You know, the other thing I was going to add to that, not just the flight dynamics, but the effects of G-forces, which I'm going to say you don't get a whole... You may or may not, I'm not an expert, I've never seen it, but I don't know how much G-forces you would experience in space, or at least in these movies you don't really... It's not really portrayed. And I think the only time that you ever saw any kind of force of inertia is when, you know, in Empire Strikes Back, when they finally hit light speed and R2-D2 was thrown back into the maintenance pit on top of Chewbacca.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the whole battle scene with the Millennium Falcon on Jakku, you know, you saw BB-8 getting tossed around everywhere, and it's like, oh, yeah, so, you know, I think that's the first time I've ever seen anybody get tossed in a spaceship.
Right.
And to the point where they actually had that 0G moment where BB-8 was hovering in the middle of the passageway. Mm-hmm. And that's when he shot out the lines for stability, yeah. And the interesting thing is, I've been underway in heavy seas and jumped, probably unsafely, from the deck to the ceiling by just using minimal force and catching the ship while it was moving down, so that you stayed in the same spot and the ship moved to meet you. So I understand that inertial dynamic in a way that a lot of people can't.
Yeah.
It's just fun.
Oh yeah. Well, we had a similar experience when the boat would do what we call emergency blow, where it was an emergency surfacing maneuver, and everybody liked to be in the front of the submarine when it popped out of the water and then it fell down, and yeah, you felt that negative G. And of course, you always get some guy who thinks he can jump and float down or whatever. It didn't quite work out that way, but you know, that's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
It works, yeah.
That's not how the Force works.
So, that said, so we going on to the third like?
Yes.
Okay, my third like is when she gets the lightsaber, the vision that she gets. That is awesome. The whole history,
dream sequence.
Everything, it just, yes, it pulls everything in. All of it. I like that a lot. It was one of those like, wow, okay, it pulled everything from the past in, but where is it going to go? Where is that going with us?
Left us with more questions than answers. So. Yeah, it's funny too, because that and another scene later on when we talk about questions is going to lead up to a very deep question that some people are going to look at and say, are you crazy? Or other people are going to say, that's very interesting.
So I think, does that cover everyone's likes?
Or I just did number 3. You two both have a third like.
So my third like. This, I believe, was the first time in any Star Wars movie where stormtroopers actually had emotions. before we even knew who was under that mask, Finn already had character. He had emotions. For the first time that, they weren't just these automatons, these drones, or whatever description you want to add to them. You start to realize that these are actually people under those masks.
I will disagree with you in
As will
regards to the emotional piece, and Christy is disagreeing as well. So,
Okay.
For what reason do you disagree first?
In one of the original trilogy movies, they talk about, hey, have you seen the plans when Obi-Wan is doing the...
Oh, deactivating the tractor beam?
Yes. They're talking about, have you seen this new model? Whatever. They're talking like two regular guys,
On guard duty.
Yeah, just on guard duty. It just kind of...
Okay, I'll agree with you on that, but how much did you care? I mean, if Ben Kenobi walked up to him and cut them down with a lightsaber.
Oh, I didn't care at all.
Yeah.
But still, I actually thought that they were people, but they were still people on the wrong side.
But we were supposed to care about Finn.
Yeah.
So to
Right.
have him have emotion was just part of the movie plan. The part that I will agree with you 100% on in a way that we hadn't seen before was on Jakku when that stormtrooper dies and he reaches up to Finn, and that's how he gets the blood on his helmet, and you see him actually be concerned about dying or
Without even taking their helmets off, you can still feel that concern. So I think it was more emotions versus just being a person. So
Yeah, and that's the big difference, though. It's like, because again, later on you see Finn hesitate to pull the trigger when he's given the order to execute the villagers.
Right.
Those two guys on the Death Star in Episode 4, I don't think would have hesitated if they saw Ben Kenobi and it's like, hey, look at that, it's like,
yeah, right.
No,
true.
I agree.
True.
But I will tell you, John Boyega did a fantastic job acting through the armor. I mean, there's
Yeah.
no facial expressions, and yet you can still tell exactly what he's feeling. The
Right.
trepidation, the nervousness, the concern, the I don't want to be here. All of that stuff is conveyed in just body language. It was one of the best non-facial performances of emotion that I had seen in a good long time.
I'm attributing that to what I'm slowly starting to develop a term for, and I'm calling it Disney voodoo. Because this is the first one that when Disney took over Star Wars, and Disney has some sort of innate talent of giving personality to inanimate objects. I mean, the carpet in Aladdin had so much personality, and he was a freaking rug.
My dog would have pooped on it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just things like that. Disney has a talent to do that, and I think that you add a little Disney voodoo to Star Wars Stormtroopers, and all of a sudden they got personality. So.
True.
And it goes further than Finn, because when later on in Maz Kanata's temple bar, whatever you want to label it as, the Stormtrooper who recognizes Finn and yells "traitor," and when you saw him standing there and he throws down the shield, I don't know, maybe it's different for everyone else, but I saw personality come through there. Like, this Stormtrooper is actually pissed.
Or the two stormtroopers that after Kylo Ren threw his little hissy fit and destroyed the panel, and they're like,
turn around.
yeah, and they turn around and go the other way. Yeah, we're not going this way. That's normal.
I would have called that one more like the two stormtroopers in A New Hope that were just chatting about the new land speeder version or whatever. That was kind of a normal human reaction, like, oh crap, the boss is mad.
Yeah, let's... We gotta go check over there, yeah.
And not for nothing, the magic space wizard boss is mad.
Yeah.
With the big red
With the big
flaming
red...
stick thing.
Yeah, actually, the other one I was going to say though is the hidden Daniel Craig cameo when he was a stormtrooper.
Yes.
He actually displayed an emotion again that you don't see in stormtroopers very often. Was disdain, because most of the time in most of the movies when stormtroopers were given orders, they just followed it, but you never felt an emotional disdain. Yeah, there was like, they're like trained police officers. Speak sternly to your enemy. Hold it right there, and just to bark orders. But this stormtrooper, it's like, you will loosen my restraints. I'll tighten those restraints. It's like, whoa,
Scavenger scum.
yeah, it's like, whoa, that was a little bit of a strong response there, for a stormtrooper.
Yeah, I think in Return of the Jedi, if I recall correctly, the stormtroopers referred to the rebels as rebel scum
That
a
was
couple
the
of
stormtrooper
times,
who said
and they
that.
were. But and that was the thing. But I don't remember specifically if it was a stormtrooper or one of the Imperial
It was one of the officers.
So
Yes.
okay, I think specifically Finn and his emotional beats while in uniform, while in the stormtrooper uniform, and the traitor baton wielding stormtrooper were very specific instances, but for the most part, the stormtroopers were exactly what one expects: cannon fodder for the resistance and our heroes to mow through or avoid on their way to their objectives.
Yeah, which is funny you bring that up, because that'll be a segue into one of my first dislikes.
Okay.
When you get through your third like, remember that.
Okay, so we
You
are
have
actually
a
on my
third
third
like.
like.
Yeah.
I've still got a third like to use. Damn it. And which, again, this makes it difficult because as we were going through your likes, a lot of the things that I had on my list were in there. So my third like was actually, I'm going to jump right on what you guys said, and that was how Finn specifically was able to emote through the helmet, and the difference in stormtroopers from the original trilogy and then the clone troopers in the prequel trilogy to these guys. I liked that. That was a big deal for me. So to build off of the emoting bit, the stormtroopers were more interesting because they had different stormtroopers. They had the guy with the baton. They had the guy with the flamethrower.
Oh, that was awesome.
And that was a lot different, made them a lot more vicious than we'd seen in the past. The stormtroopers were easily defeated by a bunch of teddy bears in Return of the Jedi. I get the feeling that these stormtroopers, of the First Order, would not be so easily defeated by, bears and rocks and a stick.
You got a stick.
But Jyn Erso said, a man with a sharp stick and nothing left to lose can win the day.
This is true.
That's true. And I'm not dogging on the Ewoks, but that has long been a joke amongst Star Wars
it's a Star
fans
Wars
and others.
punchline.
So, but one of the things that I do kind of want to talk about as a like, and I know I'm using a bonus like, but I'm going to do that. One of the things that I cared for about this movie overall was its use of practical effects, and as another piece, the initial scene where they're on Jakku and Poe Dameron is getting ready to leave, and they have the stormtroopers there. They've already taken the village, and they've got, and now I can't remember his name, but the older gentleman that was friends with Princess Leia, and they're talking to him, and Poe shoots at Kylo Ren with the rifle, and he freezes it in midair. So going to things that we had never seen before in a Star Wars movie, in The Empire Strikes Back, you saw Vader deflect a blaster bolt with his hand, but to demonstrate the sheer raw power that Kylo Ren had with the Force, whether he was focused or not, this is just raw power, he stopped a blaster bolt in midair and then held it almost without thinking, because he engaged in a conversation and did a bunch of things that were not what you see when Luke was moving rocks on Dagobah. The kind of calm focus as they lifted up. You didn't see what you saw in The Empire Strikes Back when Darth Vader was hurling objects at Luke, which was, you actually have to have your hand out to move these things. You just saw Kylo Ren holding that thing in place and just doing his business. Just, like, oh yeah, that's a thing. It's still over there.
He's
And then
multitasking.
Yeah,
almost...
it was super cool because it was a man multitasking. That's why. I'm sorry.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Hey, you're a man too. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
I couldn't help it. The whole time you were talking, that's all that kept going through my head.
Nice. And to finish that thought, not hers, mine, as an afterthought was when he let it go and it finished going on its merry little way to blow up into whatever it was. So I liked the little details like that they put throughout the movie. So again, I know it's a bonus like, but I really did want to include that in my like conversation.
Okay.
So what was your first dislike, Christy?
My first dislike? Star Killer Base. I'm sorry, can we come up with, like, okay, let's build a bigger Death Star. It's just now forget, we're not even going to build a Death Star. We're just going to put it in the middle of a planet. That's my dislike.
Yeah, I can agree with that. It's like, you think by now they could have thought of something a little more original.
A little bit more. Like, maybe a super ship or something like that. But, come on. That's my biggest dislike for the movie right there.
Right.
Yeah, just to kind of add to yours, I mean, this isn't my dislike, but I mean, just to add to the lack of originality, but also it's like the lack of learning lessons. A better design, it's like, again, the one thing that's going to blow up the whole thing. You think it's like, hey guys, you can imagine the design team. It's like, hey guys, this thing here, I mean, it's pretty big. It's not the same exhaust port thing, but if this blows up, what happens to the rest of the planet? Well, I'm pretty sure it'll blow up. Yeah, don't you think we should fix that?
Oh, okay, good. Let's go with those plans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I remember,
Close
if
enough.
I remember, didn't that happen before? And that ties into kind of my dislike, so I just want to amplify this just a little bit, or your piece about the small thermal exhaust port located just below the main port. One frickin' heat sink? I mean, this weapon is huge in a way that would make some people very excited, and you got one heat sink, that's it? I mean, my laptop has 4 heat sinks, and it's not blowing up anything. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I can get on board with that dislike.
All right. What is your first dislike there, Daniel?
Well, to go back to the stormtroopers, their emotions and everything, and how, Finn was able to portray through that. I had watched a little piece about stormtroopers on YouTube, and it was a pretty deep discussion. I'm not going to get into many details, but it did bring up a valid point, because you were saying something about, oh yeah, we happily use stormtroopers as cannon fodder. We blow them up without question. And it's like, yeah, okay, well, you gotta have something like that. And I think the count, the kill count was just under 100 stormtroopers in this movie. I think it was something like 60 something. I could be wrong. I don't know if I'm recalling the right number, but they actually, did a count. And that's not counting how many were killed on Starkiller Base when it blew up.
Oh, yeah, fair enough. At least 3.
Yeah, but here comes the point. Is like, we're praising so much of how Finn showed emotion through the mask before we knew who Finn was. And we got to learn that, okay, these stormtroopers, they were people, or rather kids, who were kidnapped from their families and, brainwashed. I mean, essentially, they were Hitler Youth and taught to be these killers, but realized that deep down inside that they were people and that they had the potential to be something beyond their programming. And Finn was a prime example of that, because he suddenly had an awakening, so to say. I don't want to be a stormtrooper. I don't want to kill mindlessly. I want to be free and be a human being.
I want to
But-
see...
No, stop that. Anyways, but see, here, contrary to that revelation, not even, 10, 15 minutes later, after he makes this revelation and says, I'm going to help bust Poe Dameron out of here because it's the right thing to do, and it's like, well, no, you need a pilot. Yeah, I need a pilot. I just want to get out of here. I want to run. But then has absolutely zero problem blasting a bunch of other stormtroopers within the hangar bay. And then later on, stabbing one in the chest with a lightsaber and killing others with a blaster, and just, it's almost like he regained his humanity, and now it's gone again. Because all these stormtroopers could be potentially Finns. So, I don't know, that's just something that kind of bothered me later on.
I think it's an interesting take on it, but I think at that point it became a survival instinct for him. Maybe they could have been, but I'm not going to take the moment to stop and ask you that question. Sorry, you're shooting at me, I'm going to shoot back. I don't know, my opinion.
Yeah, that is an interesting spin, but I'm going to lean towards what Christy said and add that they already knew he was an anomaly. and they'd sent him back for reconditioning, so he knew that they could recondition. I appreciate the potential for stormtroopers to not want to do the stormtroopering thing, but if you don't fight because there's the possibility that someone could demonstrate humanity, then you're probably going to die, so you'd best defend yourself until you get to a point where you can actually have a negotiation. And I am going to disagree with you regarding the level of compassion that he grew into, I suppose. And that's based off of what I had said earlier. I think that he was willing to kill to survive, but the situation that he was in at the beginning of the movie was not a survival situation. There was nothing, and I hate to say this because there's nothing wholesome about killing, but there was no purpose in killing who they were killing. It was just slaughtering innocents for no reason. And I think that was where he had the moral objection, and that cemented his breakaway from his programming. When they were escaping the Star Destroyer, I don't recall seeing any particular glee in killing his fellow troopers. It was more about not getting killed himself, and then everything else that he tried to do was to get away from the First Order until he saw Rey get kidnapped, and then it was about rescuing Rey. I think his humanity was not killing innocent people and not believing in the cause that the First Order was fighting for. I don't think he was not willing to kill. I think it was just not willing to kill under those circumstances.
No, see, that's the thing. I mean, I kind of have, again, just the amount of emotion he expressed for that first dead trooper. Because it wasn't an innocent person he saw die. It wasn't just some bystander or somebody. It was a fellow trooper he watched die, and that's where he made his revelation.
He was already nervous before that in the landing craft on the way down. They focused on him.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I mean, it's like they're nervous troopers, and it depends what motivation they get. That either gives them that burst of courage that says, okay, I'm a trooper, I'm going to do this, or that, screw this, I'm out of here. And
fight or flight.
Yeah, and to see his fellow trooper go down, to me, that was his moment. And we don't know if he knew the person or what, I mean, as far as we know, it was just another trooper, and he was just, you know what? I don't want to see anyone die. I don't want to see this anymore at all. But yet, in his escape, it's like he kind of had some knowledge that maybe they were, the tethering or whatever. He wasn't aiming for the tether. He wasn't aiming for whatever was holding him back. He was aiming for other troopers. And it wasn't until they actually blasted the control room that they broke free and got out of there. And then, okay, we knew to escape, take out the missile launchers. All right, let's get the hell out of here.
Yeah, true.
But it just seemed like now he took a little bit of extra special glee in taking out the First Order, which to me just kind of seemed counterintuitive to his initial motivation. It's like he made one change to another change a little bit too quickly for me. I'm not okay with that. That's not character consistency. I don't want to say it's the same exact reason, but I mean, it's kind of like the same. The character inconsistency is like the same reason why I don't like that they changed that Han shot second, because that was counter to his character. It just didn't fit.
I agree with the character inconsistency as he went, especially when he was on Starkiller Base and he was looking at Phasma doing the, oh, I'm in charge now. You like that? I'm in charge.
To me, that particular moment seemed a little bit more consistent, because, I mean, that person could have been a source of torment throughout his career as a trooper, and so reacting to that,
right?
But again, to other fellow troopers who, again, we've already been shown that, had at least some level of connection and, dare I say, compassion towards. You can feel, that yeah, I'm connected to my fellow trooper, but then feel an absolute resentment to your commanding officer. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
What?
I still disagree, but I admit I could be wrong. So I don't remember. We covered your dislike.
Yeah, so it's your turn.
Yeah, it's your turn.
Okay. So this may seem like a little thing, but it has always sort of bothered me about Star Wars movies in general. So when I say this, it's more than just the one thing, but it was illustrated in The Force Awakens when Starkiller Base shoots its big God-fearing laser thing whatever that was. They rationalize it later in the movie and call it a hyper light speed weapon. So they've thrown some technobabble at the how it was able to travel from wherever that planet was to the Hosnian system, which is what got destroyed. Okay, that's fine. You've thrown at least a reason why this is traveling faster than light to get to the place, because if it were just a light speed weapon, it would probably be a good 40, 50 years before it ever got there, and what's the point in that? So if you're going to make a weapon that blows up planets from a long distance, that's the way to go. But what I don't understand is how is it they're on Tokadona, the planet that Maz's bar is on, and they're seeing these planets blow up in nearly real time. It takes 8.5 minutes for light from our sun, which is 93 million miles away, to get to us. Jupiter, which is the largest planet in our solar system, is nothing more than a pinprick in the night sky. And yet, in near real time, they're watching 5 planets blow up in a system that could be at least 4 light years away. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're all in the same system. But even if it's the same solar system, if Jupiter blew up right now, it would take us a good 20 minutes to figure it out, at the very least.
I have the answer. Movie magic.
Oh, it's the I believe button again.
Yeah, it's the willful suspension of disbelief, and hey, we got to make the plot move along here, and we can't wait for science to catch up.
We're not waiting 20 minutes for the do. Okay, 20 minutes later.
And we can't put in the line that it's like, wow, the Hosnian system blew up. They're like 11 light years away, so that happened about 5 hours ago. Oh no, or something. It's like...
Oh, no, I guess it's too late to email them.
No wonder I keep getting a busy signal. Son of a biscuit.
It goes straight to
I keep
voicemail.
sending them holo...
All my messages just keep getting return to sender.
The other piece of that goes to their travel through hyperspace. In the original Star Wars movie, A New Hope, they get on the Millennium Falcon and they plot a course for Alderaan from Tatooine. And they've got time to have some Jedi training. They got time to play a little holo chess. They've got time to shoot the breeze and talk about hokey religions. And in each successive movie after that, the amount of time that it takes to travel from one place to another gets shorter and shorter and shorter, as though hyperspace is just this instantaneous transport, or at the very least, it only takes a couple of minutes to travel 857 million light years, just making that up, to the next place. And that's always bothered me about Star Wars physics.
Well, 2 things. One, Star Wars, it's been said that you cannot consider it science fiction, it's science fantasy. It's a little bit more willful suspension of disbelief involved than, say, Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
Star Trek tries to be a lot more scientific, a lot more logical. Whereas Star Wars, more fantastical. The other thing is that I could say that, yeah, it took longer going from Tatooine, because Tatooine's an outer rim planet. That's on the edge, the brightest center of the universe. Tatooine is a planet.
You're on the planet that it's farther from?
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
So, yeah, that's like, driving to downtown LA all the way from frickin' Edwards Air Force Base in the middle of nowhere, versus going from Studio City to Hollywood, which is just a short hop by relative standards. So, when you start talking about the other planets that are part of the Republic or the former Republic or whatever, they're a little bit closer.
Yeah, I had actually I had made some notes about Star Trek physics and subspace and all that sort of thing. And I really was going for the approach of hyperspace must be like subspace, not an actual achievement of faster than light speed, but a shortcut, if you will, through a different area of space, like folding space, which they, I guess, figured out more and more along the way. Technology advances, okay, I'm fine with that, and that makes the whole weapon thing make some sort of sense. But even aside from that, just the parts that should work in physics just don't make sense. And I'm okay with that. Again, I've never not liked the movies because of that. It always struck me as odd. I guess physics works different here.
Yeah,
Use the Force.
It's science magic.
Yes. So that's my first dislike. Christy, well, I think we're on to you with your second dislike.
Okay. My other dislikes, I tried to pick something that was kind of more random. I didn't want to go for some of the obvious ones. My other dislike is kind of with Han Solo. What is with the jacket? When he comes in to plant the explosives, he keeps taking off that winter coat and just dropping it on the floor. Hey, nothing like announcing somebody's here. What's this strange coat doing on the floor? And Chewie keeps picking it up and giving it to him. Okay. Maybe it's the mama me, but pick up your jacket, dude. Put it someplace that nobody can see you. Just throw it on the ground. And I don't know, but that just bothers me. Stop throwing your jacket where people can see it. That's like announcing you're there.
That's definitely
The
the
other
mom
thing
in
is,
you. 'Cause I did never
how
notice.
many years have those two been together? And what? He finally tries Chewie's weapon and is like, oh, I gotta get one of these. Come on now. I
I'm
don't
going
know.
to cross that one off my dislike list because
Sorry.
that was in my notes.
Sorry. Those are my issues with Han. So
I agree with.
I'm sorry.
With
I know
what
it's
she
random,
said.
but hey,
I didn't notice the jacket. Sorry,
it's like a kid coming home from school, just right there in the hallway. Dude, put your jacket up. Pick your jacket up. Seriously, even Chewie has to hand it to him. Come on now.
Yeah, again, the jacket thing. Didn't notice, but I darn sure noticed.
You're
Han
not going to
was
see
very-
it the same way ever again.
No.
Probably. Great, you've ruined the movie for me.
Sorry.
Now I have to ask, because you've pointed out this whole jacket thing, there is a point at which Han and Leia are together, and they say that's why they separated. And I know there have was the book Bloodlines explains more the reason why Han and Leia split, and it wasn't just because Kylo Ren went bad or whatnot. Was it because he wasn't picking up his jacket? I mean, you've read the book. I haven't.
Perhaps that might be some of it. I don't know.
Oh boy.
It just said that they were different. But maybe that's it. Maybe he just didn't want to pick up his jacket and she just got tired of it and said, get out.
She did make mention of the jacket.
Yeah.
New jacket? No, same old jacket.
Well, see, it's typical married life. You just don't pay attention to these little things. Except when the jacket's on the floor, you're going to notice that stuff.
I don't leave my jacket on the floor, so this is not a problem.
Well, that's why we're still married.
Really? That's the only reason? I thought there were other reasons, but okay. Is that the... I'm done. Your jacket's on the floor? What are we doing? Hey.
Get out.
Yeah, I'm gonna quote Pulp Fiction. It's like, my name's Paul, just between y'all. You know.
Dan, do you leave your jacket on the floor? I'm just, I mean, does Nina ever complain about...
Actually, I'm the opposite of the relationship. I'm the one who actually puts his clothes away and.
Yeah, you better check.
make sure she didn't
As
come
Dan
home.
looks around
better-
for his
you
wife.
better
She's
check
the one who
and
leaves her
see.
clothes all over the place.
She does listen to this podcast, right? I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know why you're looking around.
Well, I just make sure she didn't, sneak back home from work.
Well, we could see behind you, so if she snuck in through the door, we would let you know.
Okay.
All right. I think
Okay, I'm
we've
good.
beat that horse to death about Christie's Han Solo dislikes.
Yeah, the only thing I gotta say is that, I don't consider it a dislike, but I did find it odd that, after all the years that they spent together, that's the first time you tried his rifle out?
Come on
Really? A lot of great setups in this movie and everything, but that one was a little bit of like...
Seriously?
It was fun.
He
Don't
could have
get me
said,
wrong.
"Oh, I remember how much I like this," and it would have been fun, but or something along that line.
Yeah,
but
just a slight change in the dialogue. It's like, hey, let me see your rifle. God, I love this
I love
rifle.
this thing.
That would've
I
been a
gotta
little
get me
better.
one of these. Yeah, and left it at that.
But then you would have
Yeah.
known he was going to die because he said he wanted a thing. I'm going to get one of these after we're done with this. Nope. No, you're not.
I'm gonna get one when I retire. I'm gonna retire in 2 days.
No, you're not.
Okay, so apparently the horse wasn't dead. Dan, what's your dislike?
My next dislike was the actor in the beginning, Max von Sydow. And not that he was in it, it's just that he wasn't in it enough.
Okay.
You guys don't look like you know what I'm talking. You know who I'm talking about, though, right?
No, I know who
No,
you're
I
talking
know
about.
exactly what you're
Yeah.
talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, he was the actor. You know, he was in Flash Gordon. He was Ming the Merciless. He made a small part in Conan the Barbarian. When the movie opened and I saw him, I was like, "Ooh, that guy's awesome!" You know, it's like I was like, you know, really giddy about it. And then it's like Kylo Ren comes and it's like, "I will show you," and I'm like, there he's gone. I'm like, what?
That guy's not awesome anymore.
That was such a letdown. I'm like, God, you know,
Don't get too attached.
Yeah, well, apparently not. So I was hoping for at least a scene or at least as much of him as was in Conan, because I thought, you know, he delivered, you know, a great line in Conan, which I quote every now and again.
I don't own Conan. I only see it every now and again when it's on insert name of channel here. So if you want to talk about it one day and you own it, feel free to put it on the list.
It's on the list, Mr. Send Me Lists.
Oh, yeah, that's right, it is. This is getting edited out.
Mm-hmm.
Guess who makes the creative choices on what gets to stay in and out?
Uh-huh.
So that was your second dislike?
That was my second dislike. Not enough about Max von Sydow.
Dropping the deuce on Max von Sydow. Nice. My second dislike, it's a two-parter, so work with me here, is the total ripoff of the droid with a secret plan or something plot element that is straight out of A New Hope. I know they were trying to reintroduce Star Wars with a movie that actually had some redeeming qualities to it and no Jar Jar Binks. But you can't come up with something a little more creative than the same crap we saw 38 years ago? Didn't occur to you maybe we could come up with a different plan?
Yeah, it's along the same lines as Starkiller Base. You know, we couldn't be creative on that one, and why should we? Or, you know, if we're not creative on that, what makes you think we're going to be creative with the plot?
Yeah, it just goes to the so many of the plot elements were straight ripoffs of Star Wars, A New Hope, and the original trilogy, really, when you put it all together. That part was disappointing. The other piece of that, and this is the second part, goes to the actual map itself. And I know in Attack of the Clones, they erased a planet out of the databanks. And it was out of the Jedi databanks. I don't know if anybody else had ever mapped the stars or planets or whatnot.
Your Jedi archives are incomplete. What does the Thomas Guide say?
Yeah, exactly. Let's check that. And I understand post-Empire battle damage or something, but you can't tell me, logically, that no one noticed a great steaming gap that had convenient lines in a very large section of all the galactic charts. Nobody ever thought, wow, maybe we should go map that. There's nothing there. If it were like the outer edge, you're like, oh, we just haven't been there yet. Okay, fine. But this is a very sizable chunk right out of, kind of the midsection. And I'm pretty sure there were trade routes through there. Pretty sure somebody, nope. Oh, yeah, we have to go all the way around in order to get to the planet on the other side to bring them things because we don't know what's in there. That part bothered me. It's like, it's an incomplete map. You guys, and the other piece is, you guys can't compare this to, even if you have existing, or if you have the full system, you can't get a computer to overlay this very large section and go, hold on, everything lines up this way. Yep, he's right here. Next, let's move on.
My question to that is, why is there only one map in this whole thing? There's just one. That's it.
Yeah, in the entire galaxy, there's only one chart of the entire galaxy.
And only one group of people get to have access to this map. Really? Seriously?
What about smugglers? Didn't Han Solo have a map? How do smugglers work? It's not like they're staying within standard space lanes.
Yeah.
Those two pieces just really did bother me. Again, I love this movie, and I had a great time, but let's tighten things up just a little bit. You know, let's kind of that's buttered up just right. Let's leave it right there. Let's not tighten it too much. Let's not leave it too loose.
Yeah, it's like I was gonna say, I realize that this movie has a pretty sizable budget, but I mean, how much more expensive would it be to make the missing part, like part of the outer rim, someplace that's a little less traveled, something that would make a little more sense. I'm with you on that.
Well, there's a big hole in the map. I mean, okay, go fly out there and check it out. What in the,
I have an atlas in my trunk, and I can't drive through Colorado because that page is missing. Son of a bitch.
I mean, go fly out there and check out every planet you come across and see if you can find Luke. How hard is that?
Well, there are a lot of planets. I mean, I'm
But how do you know? Maybe there's only 2. You don't know.
I could extrapolate based on the size and overlaying like the average number of planets in the remaining area.
If you're the New Order, why not send a bunch of people out there?
Oh, yeah, send out probes like Darth Vader did. How about that? They're a dime a dozen.
Droids, yeah. I know why the Resistance couldn't do it, because the Resistance doesn't have much of a budget.
Right.
It's very evident in the equipment.
Right, I
But
understand.
yeah, if the First Order was so into that, I mean, I'm sorry, we blew our wad on the Starkiller base. We really don't have the budget to go looking for somebody.
Sorry.
We forgot about probe droids. My bad.
We're busy paying for Snoke's giant hologram.
So here's what I would have done if I were a filmmaker, which I'm not, but here's what I would have done to very easily rectify that glaring error, that major hole, if you will, pun intended, is just have the path that Luke took, and then have R2 lay out the starting point and the direction. And the magic crystal thing has the route that he took to wherever it was he was going. I think that would have solved everything, because then it's just a series of lines and hyperspace points. Now, you could theoretically, if you had enough time, plop everything into a database, but then that's a lot of computational power to figure out where all of these planets line up, and I think it would be relatively impossible to figure out the path that he took unless you had that one little key. That would have made it so much easier, and you could have had a lovely map of the entire galaxy instead of having, like I said earlier, your random McNally road atlas missing Colorado, so apparently I just can't drive through Colorado. I have to go somewhere else.
Yeah, you could have done it a la Stargate style, where you had the symbols of a cartouche, and that's what BB-8 was hiding, was the cartouche, was with the 6 symbols.
Yeah, where you're looking for the origin point.
Right.
Like, I don't know.
And R2 had the point of origin.
Yeah.
Put those 2 things together, and then you got a coordinate, and there you go.
Yep.
Yeah, something like that would have been better.
And what if R2 was carrying a Goa'uld? I mean, that would have been... Oh, wait, sorry.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Now we're mixing.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Moving along.
So you are on your third dislike, Christy.
Okay, since I have mentioned how huge of an impact Leia had on my life growing up, I was very disappointed in what they did for her in this movie. Now, granted, she was not the main character or everything like that, but I felt like they could have done her a little bit more justice with the whole thing. And I don't think it wasn't anything against Carrie Fisher. It was just what they wrote for the character, and I just felt like it was very flat, and I was really disappointed in it because she has been such a powerhouse and such a strong influence all throughout, and then she just was very one-dimensional this whole time, and I was disappointed because I was like, this is my hero. Oh, that's it? That's all you got? I was kind of sad.
Would you have felt better if she had hugged Chewie first?
I would have felt something more if she would have given Chewie a hug too, but she didn't even give, poor Chewie, he got nothing. And I felt the emotion when she knew that Han was gone, but I don't know, when she's like, tell me, Could we have given her a better line about we need some good information, we need some hope, we need something? I could have probably asked the kindergarten class down the street, and they probably could have given us a better line. Just my opinion, but
Wow.
I don't know. It really was flat, and I don't know. I felt bad for her because
We know a writer could probably punch that up.
yeah, I mean, well, she's been such a strong character, and I just felt that they did not give her that depth or the strength that she's had this whole time. They left me feeling like she was very weak, and it was sad for me.
Yeah, I can agree on that. You know, it's just, I mean, her presence wasn't as large as it could have been. It was just one of those things where it's just like, huh, okay. I don't know if I felt as strongly as Christy did, but yeah, it was definitely noticeable. I just kind of thought that she's kind of, I know I was going to say, no, you know what, forget it. I'm not even going to say that. So I'm going to let that
Are you going to
go.
piss my wife off? Because I have to live with her, so just letting you know.
No, I mean,
Oh, well, in that case, you know.
I mean, I understand that she's not a main character as far as this movie goes, and I get that, and she's transitioned into a very different role, and I understand that, and I can respect that, but I just felt like how they wrote and what they wrote for her was what was disappointing to me. That part of it kind of bothered me. I mean, I was a kid that Halloween, everything, I dressed up like Leia, all that kind of stuff, you know, so she definitely had a big impact on me. And after this movie, I don't see kids going out to dress up like General Leia.
Well, maybe the older kids.
No, I don't think so.
I was going to say, yeah, you didn't see too much cosplay of General Leia at the...
No, it was mostly
No.
Rey because she was the star of the movie.
Right, I mean, I just
Yeah.
felt like they just
Well-
wrote her very flat.
If you look at Star Wars with a critical eye, then a lot of the dialogue is pretty flat in the first place. It's not new. I would have expected better, so I'm with you there. I don't have the emotional attachment to Princess Leia as a personal hero, so I didn't see it as much of an issue as you did.
Fair enough.
Okay, yeah.
Dan, your second dislike, I believe, or third. We're on third.
Yeah, this is the third.
1, 2,
Well,
5.
this one, this one was a toss-up. You know, it's like the first choice, the first thing they came up with was just something really paltry and insignificant. It seems to be something that plagues a lot of sci-fi fantasy movies, and it's making things harder than they really need to be. And it was just that little moment at the end when they finally go to Luke Skywalker's planet and land on his island. But they land at the bottom and make Rey walk up all those stairs. It's just like, you know, and it's like The Hobbit with the eagles. It's like the eagles in the first movie, they rescued them and they flew them to safety, but then dropped them off within sight of the mountain. And I'm thinking, hey guys,
Could you just flown them to the mountain?
can you just fly us just a little bit? I mean,
It's like
come on,
maybe 10 minutes
like
by air. No big deal.
5 minutes, yeah, 5 minute
5
flight
more
for
minutes,
you,
we'd have cut like
5 more
25
weeks
minutes
for
out of
us,
this
you know?
movie.
You know, but I said, okay, you know, that's not enough of a dislike. That's just, you know, kind of a movie pet peeve. So I decided not to go with that one.
You just got a free
The-
dislike. Look at you go. Way to go. Way to play the system.
Much, yeah. Then I was gonna go with like, it's too much woohoos. You know, it's like, nah, no.
That was on my list.
Yeah, I'm like, no, it's not enough really much to talk about and everything. So the dislike that I really went with, and it's like you already touched on it, is, man, Chewbacca get ignored by everybody.
Oh.
You know,
Not by that
the
nurse,
first
though.
movie-
She was all over
Oh.
Chewbacca.
Oh yeah, the nurse was all over him, but you know, everyone else, you know, it's like. But here's the thing, you know, it's like in the first movie he didn't get no medal when he helped destroy the Death Star, you know, it's just like
That always made
Hey,
me
where's-
angry, by the way. That has
yeah,
always
where's
made me
Chewbacca's
angry.
medal? There has been some explanations, but none of them have been like none of them are canon. You know, like he said, no, his culture doesn't like medals or something like that.
I'm sure he would have liked a medal. Maybe hang it in the Falcon in his quarters.
But here, not only does he lose his long time, you know, life, as was it Jay and Silent Bob, my hetero life partner.
Yeah.
Not only does he lose him, he's forced to shoot essentially what is his family. watches his family do it and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, basically like his nephew.
yeah.
Yeah, he raised him. Han and Leia were still together, had this baby. Chewie was there, and Chewie helped raise him and everything like that. So that was almost his son. And they get back to the Resistance base and everything, and he just walks on, and everyone just ignores him.
Poor Chewie, he's just all by himself. Just leave him.
Yeah, I was like, can anybody, give Chewie some props here. He's been through a lot.
And it wasn't as though he didn't give hugs or receive hugs.
Right.
Oh,
I mean, he got hugged in the movie.
he's a hugger.
Just not after his closest friend in the entire universe was brutally murdered by his own son. Yeah, I can see where that would be frustrating. I'm with you. I already mentioned it. I don't think I need to agree with you much more, but poor Chewie. Now I'm sad.
Yeah. All right, your third like or dislike.
Yeah, that's going to be a rough one. As much as I love
He
this
has
movie.
like 5 pages of dislikes. No, I'm kidding.
I have 5 pages of notes on this movie, and I've already covered a couple of things. This is a toss-up between 2 characters. The first of which is Captain Phasma,
Oh, thank goodness.
who really was meant to be something special and ended up being a fat lot of nothing. In all of the pre-release media, they talked about Gwendolyn Christie and how she was going to be this badass stormtrooper with special armor, and it's going to be a stormtrooper you've never seen before. It'll be great. And then she shows up, and in the first part of the movie, I was like, oh, who is this? I know I'd seen some of the trailers, and yeah, Captain Phasma, got it. She looks cool. I'm cool. First female stormtrooper. Again, you're talking about representation. Even the bad guys get girls. Awesome. And then she does next to nothing for the entire movie. The one thing she does is tell them to kill all the people. Then she orders Finn to her division. And after that, it's nothing. Nothing useful anyway. She just shows up for Finn to mock. So it was between her and Poe Dameron post TIE Fighter crash. Because I was perfectly fine with Poe Dameron, guy on a secret mission, going to get the secret plans or the secret map, or he's going to get the map of Colorado, and he gets captured, and then Finn helps him escape. If he would have died at that point, I would have been sad. I would have been emotionally invested in him as a character to get to that point, but Finn had already established that he was the main through point on the story. So I could have lived without seeing Poe Dameron anywhere else in the movie. You could have had somebody else pilot the X-Wing that went in and magically destroyed the super huge building size thermal exhaust port on Starkiller Base. It would have been okay. So I think they just decided, we need another guy in here. We need somebody else in here for somebody to talk to. We need a sort of Han Solo light equivalent to continue being a pilot, to do piloty stuff. Maybe that's what it was. Or they could have written it out where he didn't die and he just ended up, the ship separated and you physically saw it. But the way they went about him dying or going missing after the crash was there's nothing left of him but a jacket. The ship blows up and you're like, well, I guess he died.
Again,
Damn.
with the jacket. Seriously, what is it with this movie and jackets? Seriously, they make a comment about Han Solo's jacket. Now it's Poe Dameron's jacket. Then it's another jacket of Han Solo's on the floor. What's with the jackets?
I believe I can answer that question for you. And I can use a 35-year-old reference to do it.
Oh?
As Mel Brooks said in the fine parody Spaceballs, merchandising.
Yeah, exactly. Seriously.
Yeah, so it was a toss-up between those two, but I think I'm going to go with Captain Phasma as my third dislike.
Not enough of her, huh?
Yeah, I think they had a fine opportunity to show a badass stormtrooper and to improve upon what they had done with Boba Fett. I like Boba Fett, don't get me wrong, but for a guy that had probably about 15 minutes in 3 movies and wasn't even mentioned in the first one, he sure does get a lot of play as being one of the most important characters ever. All he was a freaking transport to get Han Solo to Jabba the Hutt. That was it. He's no good to me dead. Okay, great. And then years later, he's a fan favorite for, like I said, what amounts to 10 to 15 minutes of brief on-screen time where he wasn't even the main point of the shot.
It's all about the looks, man.
They had an opportunity to make Captain Phasma into a better Boba Fett, and they didn't do it. So that's my take on it, and I would love to hear what you guys think about that.
I think they should have had Captain Phasma as the one that yelled traitor and started fighting with Finn. I think that would have been better.
That would have been awesome.
I would have totally bought that.
And have them battle it out. That would have totally given more credibility to her badassness,
Yeah.
And the fact that she was different and special. She had this cool weapon that can match up with a lightsaber, and she can go toe to toe with anybody like that. Otherwise, she's just a chick in some silver specials, stormtrooper stuff. Okay, good. The girl's got some bling on. Yay!
That would have been brilliant, though. I would have loved to have seen that in the middle of the movie where Finn and Phasma fight. She gets wounded or something, stray blaster bolt, whatever. And then you could work in the I'm in charge piece, maybe change the dialogue a little bit, on Starkiller Base. That would have been perfect and tight.
I was gonna say that would probably would have strengthened Finn's reaction. I'm in charge now. I'm in charge. That would have made it more valid.
Right.
Yeah, no, that you are now officially hired to punch up the script.
Oh, thank you.
I have no hiring authority in anything to do with Lucasfilm, but
I'll make some calls.
All right.
You're closer to the problem than we are, Dan. All right. Well, I think we've all covered our dislikes, right?
Looks like it.
The three of us.
We each have questions.
You've got questions. We've got answers.
Maybe.
I've got answers. They may not match. Okay, so Christy, once again, what is your first question?
Well, we touched on it a little bit earlier. When Rey gets the lightsaber, the Force vision that she got, where are they going to go with that? I'm curious how much of that is going to come back. Like, how much of the past is she going to find out about? Because it definitely affected her in a very, very serious way.
But she saw things that she wasn't necessarily privy to. I don't think she was on the Mud Planet when Luke was reaching out for R2, but maybe she was, and maybe that was before she got deposited on Jakku.
I don't know. That's the questions that there was a lot of things going on with that, not just past, but other things, and so I think that's questions I want answered.
Yeah, where
all the pieces of that, how are they going to fit in?
Yeah, that begs another question, which is, were they her potentially suppressed memories, or were they just Force flashes of things that occurred that are going to then tie the story in together?
I don't know. I think it's more specific to the crystal in the lightsaber. That's my personal take. Because each crystal is supposedly calls out to the individual owner. And I think there's a connection between the crystal and the lightsaber, which is why I think that Kylo Ren's, it doesn't have the clean lines. It's kind of incomplete. Because I think it's not so much forced it, but I don't think it called to him in the same way. He just took something and used it and turned it to the dark side, which this is all my conjecture. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's true, but that's just my feeling.
This is how fan theories start, so feel free.
As far as the crystal in Luke's lightsaber, I think that it's called to Rey, because even, Maz has said, hey, it's calling to you. And I think that it's feeling that it's found its new owner or, connection, but it's both with memories for her or him together. It could be both.
I like the memories from her idea, and here's why. That lightsaber went missing in the middle of The Empire Strikes Back. And I would like to hear the story about how
Well,
Maz
yeah, she
Kanata
said-
got that. So if it's memories from Luke transmitted through the Force, I think that might be a thing you could kind of make sense if you wrote it properly. But I'm more inclined to believe that it's accessing her own memories
Maybe.
as a
I don't know.
means of triggering her to return her to where she should be, according to the Force.
Perhaps. I don't know. We'll find out because she said that's a longer story for another time. So
What do you think, Dan? You've got that look.
Well, yeah, I'm just waiting for my time because
Sorry.
there's a no, that's okay, that's all right. Because it goes along to my question, it's like, and it's the question of Rey's lineage, which is very interwoven in what your question is. What does all these memories mean and everything? I feel that it's very related to her lineage. Now, everyone says the obvious, oh, she's got to be Luke Skywalker's daughter or whatever.
I don't think so.
And I don't think so either. And
I think
so
you're
for
wrong.
From
This is
from
the
a
debate in
movie-making
our house.
standpoint- Okay. Well, from a movie making standpoint, too obvious. It's too easy. It's too much of a giveaway. From a storytelling aspect, I think there's a lot more that has been shown that shows that he is not. And the first most obvious is when Maz Kanata was talking about after she had the visions and Maz is talking to Rey, and she says something to the effect of, the people you're waiting for, they're not coming. But where your belonging you seek is not behind you, it's ahead of you. So let's just say, for discussion's sake, that she means Luke Skywalker. It's like, Luke Skywalker, he's not coming back for you. But Luke Skywalker isn't behind you, he's ahead of you, and it's like, none of that makes sense. It's like, if you add Luke Skywalker to that, so it's to me that is the dead giveaway that it's not Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
There's a fan theory that's out there that states that she's possibly related to Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that's why you hear his voice in the vision. It's a good theory. There's a lot of evidence backing it up, but I still don't buy it.
I don't buy it either.
And here comes my giveaway, and I'm going to give you the evidence that I've collected from different YouTube videos, different commentaries, and to relate it to what you guys are talking about. And this is my favorite theory, and I hope this is true because it'd be just one of those most badass moments, is that Rey is related to Palpatine.
Yeah, I've heard that theory as well.
Okay, so let's start with...
I don't think
you're
I've
saying-
heard that one. Maybe I have.
Okay, well, let's go through it. You talk about the Kyber crystals that are the heart of the lightsabers. They call for each user.
Mm-hmm.
And here's again, from a movie making standpoint, here's the red herring, the turnaround, is that perhaps
With a herring! Sorry. Wrong.
the crystal wasn't calling to Rey. The crystal was trying to ward her away, knowing her lineage. And that's why she had such a repulsed reaction to it. I never want to touch that thing again, because it gave her memories it felt, the Force knew that she wasn't going to be comfortable with, that she wasn't going to like. But in those memories, though, not only do you hear Obi-Wan's voice, you also hear a familiar scream. You hear this, rah, and that's the same battle cry that Palpatine used when he murdered all the Jedi in his office, when he fought Mace Windu. And that is, in canon, in the novelizations, that's considered some kind of battle cry that Force users use to incapacitate. It's kind of like a flashbang grenade, so to say.
Is that Dark Force users or?
I don't remember if they said, but probably Dark Force users use it, and that's why he was able to kill like 2 Jedi like right away because of that technique.
Yeah, well, that sort of explains why they were just standing there dumbfounded when they're Jedi masters.
Yeah.
Like, dude leapt across the room in super slow motion, and you couldn't figure out you were gonna get dead. Anyway, I digress.
Yes. So there's that part. The other evidence that I utilize, and this is the first thing I noticed when my first time I saw The Force Awakens, is Rey is untrained as far as any Jedi or Sith fighter. Yet she had a style of lightsaber combat, and the only one that you ever saw fight the way she did was Palpatine when he fought Mace Windu, and he used the head height, held the lightsaber at head height, and thrust it forward.
Yeah.
She used that technique. Nobody else in any movie has used that technique before. when she was being interrogated by Kylo Ren, and she started fighting back with the Force, and she, said, "You're just scared because you feel you're never going to be as strong as Darth Vader," and she almost seemed to enjoy that. It was almost a borderline sadistic air about it and everything. And then when she fought him on the Starkiller planet, when she had incapacitated him and he was close to defeat, she circled him. She looked at him like,
Yeah, she had the bloodlust in her eyes.
Yeah.
yeah, and you saw that in Palpatine a couple times.
And not to be that guy, but thanks for taking away one of my questions because I had like 6, so I don't have to ask that one now.
So that's my question is what is Rey's lineage, and this is what I think it's going to be, so, and that's the evidence I use.
I like that theory. I don't agree with it, and I really do subscribe to the she's Luke's daughter theory.
I disagree.
Okay, well, once again, you're entitled.
Well, present your evidence.
The biggest piece of evidence is it was Luke's father's lightsaber, it was Luke's lightsaber, and it calls to you. That could be misdirection. It would be understandable if it is. I would like to be surprised. So part of my adherence to this theory is because if it's not, then I'll be surprised. But the lightsaber lineage handed down from generation to generation to generation, the previous 6 movies were about a Skywalker, and while I understand that the Skywalkers have messed up the galaxy significantly, or at least one of them has, the Star Wars story, Rogue One notwithstanding, as far as the movies, it's always been about a Skywalker.
Well, whether you like it or not, Kylo Ren is still.
But he's.
Yeah, so it's exactly what I was going to say. You still have a Skywalker playing center stage.
Well, and you still have someone of Skywalker lineage mucking up the galaxy, which is, ironically appropriate.
But who else has been part of the Skywalker lineage? Who else has been playing through the last 6.5, or I don't know if Rogue One can be considered a full episode, or 7 movies?
R2-D2 and C-3PO?
No, he may not have appeared in every movie, but he was at least mentioned.
Recognized me by my one red arm.
Is Palpatine though? He was mentioned in the first movie. He as being an influence. Through Grand Moff Tarkin, the Emperor has decided to dissolve the Senate and everything. And before he was Emperor, Palpatine was shown in the prequel episodes, shown to be manipulating everything to create the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
So Rey might be that element of Palpatine mucking up the galaxy with the Skywalker,
Yeah.
who is Kylo Ren.
The biggest hole in that theory, in my opinion, unless she's a clone or some other such nonsense, is she's what, 20, 22, mid-20s at the oldest?
Oh yeah, but I didn't say she was his daughter, but she is a Palpatine lineage. So she could be either a clone or a granddaughter or somewhere along those lines.
I think that's too big of a... Well, I don't know. But the same token, Luke never showed a significant amount of interest in anyone other than his sister.
Yeah, I think that damaged him, and that's why he never went after another one.
But at least he showed an interest in a woman? They never ever spoke of Palpatine having any relationship other than pursuing his Sith powers. So I don't know that I could buy into him having offspring or even grandchildren, which would kind of be where she would be.
But in the prequels, he talks about the utilization of the Dark Force
To create
the dark
life.
side of the Force to create life. And it would not be beyond his, not abilities, but beyond his desires to utilize that to continue his lineage to maintain control of the galaxy.
Well, maybe he created Snoke.
That's another possibility. But of course, you've heard the theories about who Snoke is possibly Darth Plagueis.
Yeah, Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Yeah. I haven't really subscribed to that one, personally, because it doesn't matter as much to me if he is or not. I'm more invested into who Rey is.
Yeah, like I said, I still think it's Luke's daughter, and I think so because of the lightsaber lineage connection.
The other thing about that though is that at the end of the movie when she shows up on the island and holds out that lightsaber to him, he seems less than thrilled to see it. I mean, not even shocked.
Well, okay, so that segues really nicely, and I don't want to keep letting my questions get asked, so I'm going to use this as my third question. What do you interpret Luke's look to be? What do you interpret washing over Luke's face in that final scene? Because he didn't have any dialogue. He's got to emote with his face. What did you get out of it?
What I got out of it was not disappointment, but just very, very troubled, because there's the other theories that she was part of his initial Jedi Academy that he was trying to start, that he probably recognized Rey's lineage and tried to train the Sith out of her type of thing. It's like, okay, let's hide who she is. And that's, kind of possibly why Kylo Ren appears to rescue her. Because, in the dream, when she touches the lightsaber, it looks like the guy's about to hit her with a club and Kylo Ren stabs him in the back. So it looks like he actually saved her. But then Luke realizing that, okay, look, I don't know if I can help her. Teaching her more of the Force is more dangerous than beneficial. Has her memory wiped or whatever. Leaves her on Jakku, hopefully never to be a threat. But all of a sudden, here she shows up at his doorstep with his lightsaber, and he's like, "Oh shit," Like all his troubles just came back, and it's like no matter how much he tries to escape, he picked the most remote planet. He even took away Colorado out of the map, hoping nobody would come find him. And here it's like that kid that showed that, that you don't want any part of anymore, shows up at his doorstep. That's the look.
Hey, mister, you want some Girl Scout cookies? Come on!
Yeah, I mean, I kind of felt like he had that look like, oh, no, here we go again. Okay, no matter how much I try, I can't escape this.
I agree. And I think he was haunted by his failures. Because to me, that look was haunted. That was a blast from the past. I think he recognized who Rey was. Whoever she is, it doesn't, her lineage is unimportant. He just recognized that it was her. Just as Leia knew that Han had died and that Ben had killed him, I'm sure that Luke felt it across the vastness of space through the Force as well. So I think he kind of knew what was going on, and the other aspect of that haunted look was the realization that he was going to have to come back to training Rey at the very least and combating this evil in the galaxy in the Knights of Ren that he probably felt some responsibility for creating. One of the things that I found interesting about The Force Awakens when they made the movie and they said that all of the books that had come before it, unless they specifically said, were not canon. So that erased 30 years of Star Wars history and Star Wars in-universe history of things that had happened so they could go back and tell some new stories. But Luke had created a whole Jedi Academy, so it's kind of shown that he was, it's even told, Han says it, that he was trying to train the next generation of Jedi, and he was doing it alone. They haven't filled in those 30 years to find out what else Luke had learned about the Force, because otherwise he's just teaching people to, lift some rocks and be calm and leave your master after 3 days because that's all you need to be a Jedi. Now, granted, there was a 3-year time span between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. I believe that's how long Han was frozen in carbonite rather. So he had done some more training. He had some time, but that's not a lot of time for someone to go out and start training a whole new crop of people. A whole new crop of Jedi to bring justice to the galaxy. So I think that he was haunted, again, like I said, by his failures and by the realization that he was going to have to continue training that he had probably started before with Rey, and the reluctance or the feeling that maybe he still wasn't ready to train a pupil, to take on a pupil, and he felt that he hadn't learned enough yet to correct the errors that he had made earlier. That's kind of what I got out of the facial expression and installing my own history into the franchise.
I don't know. Maybe he was sad because it took her so long to walk up all those stairs.
It's like, yeah, they did the same thing to me when they dropped me off here. It's like, you could have
feel
just
ya.
parked it up here, but
I know
no.
how long it takes to walk up those stairs.
I'm calling some people to find out what the first line he says is, and I hope it's "Welcome to Colorado." Just throwing it out there.
No, but last thing I gotta say though, especially about kind of to also support that he seemed less than thrilled to see Rey in that lightsaber, is Han Solo expressed more surprise when he saw it than he did. It's almost like he knows, like he's seen it before. He knows that somebody found it and he knows it was there in somebody's possession, and that somebody bringing it to him was less than thrilling to him. Whereas Han Solo had no clue.
Yeah, but again, that goes to that whole Force connection. If the lightsaber called out to Luke, or found Luke in A New Hope through, obviously, Ben Kenobi, but if there is a connection through the Force to the lightsaber, then Luke would have to know that somebody had found it. The only question that begs is, why the hell didn't he go looking for it after The Empire Strikes Back?
Yeah, good question. But that is a question to be answered for another time.
Well, I'm sure that Maz Kanata will tell us a story about how that lightsaber came to be in her little hands with her big eyes.
So what's your next question, Christy?
I would like that answered and the story of the lightsaber, but like I said, but also I want the Knights of Ren. I would like that explained.
Who are the Knights of Ren?
Yeah.
Is that your question?
Yeah, I would like that and their whole backstory. I would like more of that explained. And I would hope that they do a little bit more justice than the prequels did for Darth Vader. And snap! Oh, yeah, he's dark now. It's like...
He's a bad guy.
Yeah, my problem with that is, like, I wish that the Palpatine had a little bit more, expressed a little bit more effort in naming him, because it almost sounded like, it would have been great if he named him, like, okay, I name you after the third Lord of the Sith from the Old Republic, whose name was Vada Tatori, so I name you Darth Vader, or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was
Right,
more
right.
A little
I name
history.
you... Vader, sure, why not?
Yeah, sure. You're going to be Darth Vader anyway.
I
We already
name
know
you
that, so
George.
let me just throw a line in here. Darth George.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing about the Knights of Ren that harkens back to A New Hope, and again, they're doing the homage thing, the term Sith was never used in A New Hope. It actually only showed up in the trading cards that had a picture of, in fact, I think I have one in the closet that says Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith. That's the only time it shows up. I guess George Lucas had already named it, so he knew that it was going to be a thing, but it was never mentioned in A New Hope at all. And 10 minutes after Star Wars came out, like, oh, he's a Sith. And this lends credence to what you were talking about earlier about, oh, there's the Star Wars nerd. Because you knew terms like Sith, and you could say things about the movie that were only in the trading cards, whereas many young kids were taking those very same trading cards and attaching them to the crossbeam on their bicycle so they could get that cool click, 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 click effect on the spokes with the trading card.
And I was knocking them off their bicycle and taking their cards.
Well, they were already bent up by then. Yeah, so Christy was the bully, so just so you know.
No, I'm just kidding. I was also the Star Wars nerd, so.
But this brings it back to the Knights of Ren. They mention it in here, but in the same way in A New Hope, they don't really tell you what a Sith is. It's a thing. So maybe they will, maybe they won't, and maybe fandom will provide its own explanations.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, no, actually, the thing to add to that, it's like I just remember way back in between Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. In fact, it was the months leading up to the release of Empire Strikes Back. My brother was, again, the huge fan. He used to have this collection of newspaper clippings and whatnot. He called the Star Files. He even wrote out the Star Wars font on this folder. And
Nice.
there's all these things that he collected. Yeah, I mean, talk about uber nerd. If he had lived longer, I probably would have modeled a lot of my uber nerdness after him. But yeah, he used to ask me that trivia question. Is like, what is the other name of Darth Vader? And I'm like, Vader? It's Lord Vader.
Darth?
And he's like, no, and he would say, it's the Dark Lord of the Sith. And again, at that young age, I had no idea what he was talking about. I was like, okay, Dark Lord of the Sith. I had no clue.
Yeah.
It took me a while before I learned what that really was.
That's cool, though. I mean, it's nice to... That's one of the things about Star Wars that I think is fantastic, is it brings people together. And it's so interwoven into our culture. But to hear a story like that, where even now, decades later, you're able to recall bonding with your brother over something as silly as movie trivia. I don't want to say it, but it's just a movie.
No, it's not.
But you catch what I'm saying. I mean, it's
No, I catch what you're saying.
it's movie trivia, and it brings us together because it's something that we can talk about, which kind of really goes to why we had this podcast in the first place. So we can thank Star Wars for that.
Oh, Star Wars was a big reason we connected. So,
Yeah.
a lot of the Star Wars references were what I would pick up on or, take it and run with. That's why I fell in love with you. No, I'm just kidding.
It's
like,
it's not?
ew.
Wait, no, it's not. Why do I have to listen to this?
Oh. And Christy will
All
never
right.
be a guest on this show again. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, so what was your question?
Did you already do your second question?
I just asked about the Knights of Ren, so I'm good. I've done
Yeah.
Oh
two.
yeah. So that's two. Okay.
Yeah.
So my question.
Yes.
Yes.
So the thing that I left this movie wondering, scratching my head and pondering over, is Finn really the one who's Force awakened?
Ah.
Because here's my evidence is that again, movie making aspect, Rey seems very obvious because already people are, whether they believe she's a Skywalker, she's a Kenobi, or she's a Palpatine, she's definitely Force sensitive and she displays it.
Oh, she's more than Force sensitive, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's she's a Force user.
Mm-hmm.
However, with Finn, we see somebody who makes a definite life change in the very beginning of the movie, and he goes through a growth as to self-preservation to quote unquote doing the right thing, and then realizing that I need a weapon, and you have a weapon. I'm like, oh, the lightsaber. He shows a kind of a mild aptitude for it. I mean, yeah, he was combat trained and everything, but still does all right. And then stands up to Kylo Ren, which, like I said, is probably singularly the bravest thing I've seen any character do in almost any movie. So it makes me wonder.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that, it brings up the question that a lot of people had, if Kylo Ren is so badass, how is it that an untrained Force user and a breakaway stormtrooper were able to fight him pretty much to a standstill?
Yeah, but Snoke even says something about bringing Kylo back because he has to complete his training. So...
well, the other part of that is freaking Kylo Ren was shot with Chewie's weapon.
Yeah, he was bleeding. They make it a point of showing the blood on the snow.
But it's not just that he was bleeding, though. He was hit by some... Because, when Han says, hey, can I try that? And here's, like I said, this is the setup that...
Right.
Yeah.
That the filmmakers, it's like it was shown that this is a very powerful weapon. It's making
it's Chekhov's bowcaster.
Yeah, and it's making stormtroopers fly. It's causing large explosions. So when Kylo Ren had to absorb that, he's incredibly wounded. He's weak.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
No.
right.
I totally understand that, and I completely agree with you.
I think the other thing about supporting your thought about Finn is also that lends credibility to why he's able to keep resisting the programming as a stormtrooper too. Why they have to keep sending him back to go get reprogrammed and stuff like that.
I don't want to disagree with you because I think it's an interesting theory to have Finn be the awakening in the Force. The only flaw that I can see in that is when they talk about Finn, and I mean Captain Phasma and I believe it's General Hux, perhaps? But they talk about him and say, it's the first time he's ever broken programming, so I sent him back for reconditioning, and there were no other indicators that this was an issue.
Yeah.
So he decided he needed to escape because he didn't want to be reconditioned. He didn't want to be reprogrammed. So that's the only thing that I can see that would be counter to that. But that's just a minor detail.
That's just to say that this isn't a long-term issue of his. This is now him awakening. So we caught the blossoming.
Yeah, this is his first
right
wake
now.
up. He hasn't
And
hit snooze
the
yet.
other indicator of that was that at the planet, after the execution of all the villagers and Kylo Ren's walking by, Kylo Ren had a feeling. And he looked at him. You know, it's like he knew something was different about this stormtrooper, but didn't quite put his finger on it until after the escape. And then when they said it's like, yeah, he was helped by a stormtrooper, and Kylo Ren knew. FN 2187. But he knew who it was. You know, so he sensed there was something different.
Right.
And again, I can counter that argument.
No, go ahead. Let's have it at it.
I don't want to say it just for the sake of being argumentative, but one of the things that I don't recall if it's canon or not, but one of the things that Palpatine was supposed to be known for was the battle connectivity, if you will. Once he died, the Imperial fleet fell apart because he was, through the Force, directing the deployment of forces through his generals and admirals. And it's possible that Kylo Ren was utilizing a similar technique to push his stormtroopers forward in conjunction with the programming, and that he was vaguely aware of their conditioning. We'd already shown that he could read minds when he ripped out that BB-8 had the map to Luke Skywalker, and he was trying to rip out information from Rey. So it's possible that he was doing something like what Palpatine was at least rumored to do, and that too would have been an indicator that there was something wrong with that stormtrooper. What impresses me is that for all his faults, Kylo Ren must have been in touch with his stormtroopers because he knew his designator immediately and seemed to be down with who his troops were, who was working for him. That's leadership.
That's the thing. Is it that he knew all of the stormtroopers, or because he felt something in Finn that he recalled that number? Yeah, I'm not saying.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not saying
again, it's a plausible theory.
You know, side of it isn't plausible, but it can be easily. It's still on a very delicate balance of which is true. I don't think it's just like it could be one way or the other at this moment.
Yeah, I think with a little more evidence, you could push it to either side and say this is valid or not.
And the other thing that I guess the last thing I shouldn't say the last thing, but one other thing I can say about it too is that the whole thing with Finn, he kind of treats it like, that's interesting. It's like, oh, it was a stormtrooper that helped him. Whereas finding out about Rey puts him in a rage. He seems more concerned with one, but still kind of attentive to the other.
That goes to my question. So if you're okay, I'm going to move on to my second question.
Go for it.
It kind of goes back to the awakening thing, but that's part of what leads me to believe that she was previously trained in the Force and had her memory wiped. So my question is, if Supreme Leader Snoke and Kylo Ren were aware of an awakening, who or what was that awakening? Which kind of leans to what, where Finn could be the awakening. If it's Rey and her abilities, why were they surprised when she resisted Kylo Ren? How did they not recognize her even when Kylo Ren said, "What girl?" And the way he said it led you to believe that he knows there is a girl who is significant, who went somewhere. And the way this universe works, the way this Star Wars universe works, there's a fat lot of coincidences, and I will buy that they are influenced by the Force to come to a place or not. But he was pretty adamant in the way he said, "What girl?" Like he recognized that this could be a problem. So the question really is, who was the awakening? And it ties in quite nicely to what you had said.
Yeah, and then kind of go along the parts that you looked at. It's like why Kylo Ren was like more like, what girl? Not just like, hey, what girl are you talking about? Looking back, he in the memories looked like he rescued her. He could possibly have known that back in the old Academy days when, Luke's attempt at training a new generation of Jedi failed, that she was known as somebody who was potentially powerful. and he might have rescued her knowing that, wow, she's a potentially powerful ally in the Force. We need her, but didn't get her. But still being unaware of her lineage. Luke, on the other hand, may have known exactly who she was. And, again, just to throw again the Palpatine thing, knowing that if she was related to Palpatine in some way, not only is she powerful, but dangerously so, especially if taught by the wrong people. So that's why he sent her away to Jakku, and her return to the scene, with Kylo Ren realizing, there's a girl. What girl? He's feeling something. It's like, could this be her? And then his shock that, she is more powerful than he possibly was led to believe because she is who she is. And to me, that makes the pieces fit.
Yeah, they're definitely valid arguing points to support that theory.
Yeah, and we have till December till we find out for sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
no. We have till December till we might find out. There's no guarantee that we're going to find out.
True.
Okay, fine.
All right. So I guess we're on to our last round of questions.
Last round of questions for me. Let's see. Who is Snoke? That's my question. And really, what size is he really? Sorry.
I don't think he's really that big.
I will seriously laugh if he's like Yoda size. That would be awesome.
He's going to be like those little aliens in the most recent Star Trek movie.
Yeah.
That showed up and they were like little tiny things. Like,
Yeah.
Really?
Or the mice from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the most powerful, intelligent beings, and they're little mice.
Yeah, they're a
Yeah,
hyper-intelligent shade of blue.
But no, I want to know. I mean, is he the new Sith Lord in town, or is he just somebody that is a Force user, or
He's Maz's ex-husband.
Oh! Yeah, you look around long enough, you can see the same eyes. You remind me of my ex-husband.
I don't know. That's just, I think his past and where he all fits in with a lot of this will get answered as well. So
Yeah, I know Dan had mentioned earlier the theory that he was Darth Plagueis.
I don't think so.
I think that's a little too easy because it was something that people jumped on. I would hope that the writers would go, oh, yeah, just scratch that one off the list. Let's come up with something else. I'm inclined to believe that he is not a Sith in the sense of what we have been trained to believe. The master and an apprentice always,
Right.
Always two there are. If that were true, then he would not allow the Knights of Ren to exist. It would just be me and Kylo.
Right.
So
I just think that he is a Force user that is more on the dark side of the Force, per se, and tends to go that way, but not full-on Sith Lord. He may like to think of himself more that way, but I don't think that he is a full-on, what we would have grown to know as a Sith Lord.
yeah, and going back to some of the books that are now legends that are no longer canon, if I recall correctly, the Darth Bane trilogy, where the Rule of Two was created. Prior to that, there was actually a Jedi Academy and a Sith Academy.
Right.
So maybe he's a Dark Force user, like an independent one that was called to, if you will, by a Sith holocron, but an older one.
Right.
That tried to teach him the ways of the old Sith. And so now he's just calling it something different because he can. I refer to the holocrons because they are canon and referenced in the Star Wars Rebels series on Disney XD. And that is canon because Disney owns
Right,
Lucasfilm
right.
and all that. So
Yeah.
I think Snoke is a Dark Force user who came upon an older Sith holocron to learn the ways of the Dark Force, or
Yeah.
the dark ways of the Force, and then took on his own apprentice. As far as getting Kylo Ren into his little club, if you will, here's what I think. I think he was biding his time and found out where Luke was training his Jedi and left the holocron for Ben to find. Maybe not necessarily specifically Ben, but I'm sure that was probably a tempting target. And that is how he got him over to the dark side. Which is why Kylo Ren still feels the call to the light.
Okay.
What do you think? Who do you think Snoke is?
You know, don't take this or anything, but it's just like at this point, I've heard different theories. I mean, I've even heard a theory that he's possibly a twisted version of Mace Windu.
Oh yeah, I've heard that one too.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I buy into that one.
Yeah.
Not even remotely.
But at this point, I don't care.
I didn't say I cared. I just said I had theories.
Well, no, I mean, just like, but that's the thing. I mean, I don't really ponder it. He is who he is at the moment. I don't see how who he is going to affect anything one way or the other. Not like, said with Rey's lineage. I mean, if she turns out to be a Palpatine, that could affect other people's behaviors very significantly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the only person that's really going to influence is Kylo Ren. And so I guess I just want to know the dynamic between them, that kind of a thing. That's more my question, is their work relationship.
He's a friend. I know him from work.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that movie, by the way, just letting you know.
Me too.
So, did we answer your question?
Yes,
Or at
we're
least
good.
addressed it.
Yes.
Dan, your last and final question.
My last question, and here's one that's going to come out of left field because I know not too many people talk about it, but this has been something I've been ruminating because every now and again I'll see like a little tiny article on some of my nerd sites or Star Wars sites. Will Han Solo return, wait for it, as a Force ghost?
No. Next.
You don't think so?
No, because he's not a Force user, so that's why I say no.
Ah, okay, so here's my thing. I think that he is unwittingly a Force user. Of all the characters who had premonitions or whatever, because I've got a very bad feeling about this. He used that line the most.
Well, true.
He always had the premonitions. He's always known for being very influential when he comes to talking his way out of situations and everything.
I'll do what I always do. I'll talk my way out of it.
Yeah, true.
Kind of like Ben Kenobi, was just like, hey, we're gonna kill you. You're not gonna kill me. Yeah, we're not gonna kill you. It's like,
Right. Maybe, but I don't think he'll come back.
And then the most telling to me was that battle on Maz Kanata's palace, where a couple times, he shoots without even looking.
Yeah.
And hits the target square center mass.
That's just showing off, though.
You know what? I tried showing off, and man, I couldn't even hit the side of a barn. Okay, so
Yeah, but you're not Han Solo. I mean, he is space badass.
well, space badass who has the Force on his side, whether he knows it or not.
I acknowledge that as a possibility, that he's an instinctual Force user, not strong in the Force in the way that the Skywalkers are or other Force users. He's just one of those guys that has an innate skill, and that comes from a potential connection to the Force. I'll buy that. If someone said, that's canon, I'm like, okay, cool. That explains the luck. But as far as coming back as a Force ghost, even the most learned masters were shocked to find out that you could do this thing when Qui-Gon Jinn did it. I mean, even Yoda was like, whoa, hey. And he started communing with Qui-Gon Jinn to learn this thing so that he could do it and pass it on to Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I don't think that even a superficial Force user could do this thing when even the most revered of Jedi Masters studied for years and contemplated for years how to do this thing. Except for maybe Qui-Gon Jinn, but he always did have a little different take on things, in understanding the living Force. So maybe that was something that he had been studying in the first place.
The hole I have in that, though, is that I don't think Darth Vader ever studied it. Darth Vader, he was doing his Sith things all these years while Qui-Gon was communing with Yoda and Obi-Wan during their exile and everything. I don't think Darth Vader was really participating in those lessons.
Probably not.
And yet, at the end of Return of the Jedi, there he is, which leads me to believe that.
Well, which one are we talking about? Are we talking about Sebastian Shaw or Hayden Christensen?
Either or. Yeah, I totally hated that. So that's why I don't own Star Wars on Blu-ray, because all those changes and everything. But going back, I'm going under the assumption that if a Jedi or whatever dies under certain circumstances, that those who are able to do it can help him along. Can say, hey, welcome to the Force. Now you're part of it. Hey, let's go say hi to your son. He'd like to see you. Because I don't think Darth Vader knew anything about that, but yet there he is as a Force ghost. And I think Han Solo is that kind of soul that when he died the way he did, that whoever is in the Force that can do it can say, hey, we need you to make an appearance for your son, for your friends, for your wife.
Yeah, you make a compelling case, but insofar as Anakin Skywalker had never been trained, or Darth Vader, whichever you prefer to know him by, Anakin was also the most powerful if you rank your power levels by midichlorian counts. He was the most powerful Force user that existed at the time. So to think that he would have a very special connection with the Force, and given his lack of lineage in that there was no father, there was just him, if he came from the Force as the prophecy theoretically foretold, or that he was a virgin in the Force, as there have been some theories, then him returning to the Force when he died is not too much of a leap. But to see Han Solo do it, who has had zero formal training in the Force, aside from watching...
That we know of.
Well, that's all we can move forward with, is the things that we know of. Aside from watching, Luke blocking some stun bolts from a floating training device.
He's seen a lot more than that, though, because at the point when he's talking to Finn, and he seems to give a pretty convincing, like, all that stuff about the Force, the light side and the dark, it's all true.
Well, he did see C-3PO floating across a bunch of Ewoks, and he's seen some stuff. I just don't think that he's seen enough stuff to put him in a position on the other side of the Force that he would be a Force ghost.
Well, but the implications of seeing Luke create the Jedi Academy, watching the training, his son, his wife, all that stuff, 30 years worth of experience that we weren't exactly privy to, but is heavily implied. To me, I think that's enough for him to know quite a bit.
I think, and I don't know if Harrison Ford is in the next movie. I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
I don't
think he
think
did not
so.
want to do anything more.
I mean, from a pure movie standpoint, Harrison Ford was done in The Empire Strikes Back. He didn't want to be in Return of the Jedi, so I don't think he would contractually obligate himself to come back. But if you're thinking about theoretical story points, I could justify bringing Han Solo back as a hallucinatory image as a part of Kylo Ren's training. I don't believe that he would come back as a Force ghost. How do you feel?
I mean, I could see him coming back as like a flashback or a memory or something like that, but I don't think I can buy it as a Force ghost.
Okay.
2-1, we win.
Stop.
Really? Because I'm winning 3-1, 3-2. Just as kind of a little bonus thing, and this we don't have to go with the in-depth thing. One thing I hope I see in the next movie, at least in a short while, because they actually made a figure for it. But I would love to see Leia with a lightsaber.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know it's probably not going to happen, and obviously was really shocked it took us this long to get to it, but I don't think you could talk about The Force Awakens and the next upcoming trilogy without lamenting Carrie Fisher's passing and her contribution to Star Wars as Princess Leia and General Leia. But I would have paid real money to see her with a lightsaber doing anything.
Oh, yes.
I mean, even a couple of swipes and blocking some blaster bolts would have been just amazing, and I'd have been happy.
Yeah.
So...
Or just stopping her son from hurting somebody. Nothing elaborate, but it's like he's about to take a swing at somebody with a lightsaber and she blocks it with her own. Just something simple like that.
Or maybe her reaching out with the Force, to stay his hand. I mean, even her using the Force in a purposeful way, I would have accepted that as a very close second.
Yeah, because there was just to go off on a quick little tangent and everything, and it wasn't a great video game because it was basically a movie tie-in cash-in for Revenge of the Sith, and the scene where you play Anakin Skywalker going to purge the Jedi Temple. One of the characters that you fight was the librarian, who's this older lady, and I remember she was the one who said, "Oh, if it's not here, it simply does not exist." That was one of those moments in an otherwise very mediocre video game that was really awesome when Anakin walks into the library and she says, "I'm here to defend it," and she whips out a lightsaber and they start dueling, and I'm like, oh my god, that's so badass that this elderly woman is fighting Anakin Skywalker, who, obviously, she's gonna die, but still, she stood up to him with a lightsaber. Thought that was awesome.
Yeah, and you're sitting there thinking she's just this Jedi who's been relegated to librarian status, and you forget they all go through lightsaber training, I assume.
Yeah, she's still a knight.
Yeah, I mean, I've read the book Bloodlines, and it kind of goes into why Leia doesn't really show her use of the Force, because she's trying to distance herself, and she doesn't want the knowledge that Darth Vader is her father to be out there, so that's why she doesn't openly use the Force a lot.
That actually fits pretty nicely. It makes some sense, makes some pieces come together.
And that's the good thing about rebooting that universe, if you will, by adjusting the canon, because in the Legends series, she did train with the lightsaber and she did train with the Force. So
right.
Yeah, I think that's where that figure, that the little Princess Leia figure with a lightsaber came from, was from the expanded universe.
Right. Or this one, at one point when they find out that she is Darth Vader's daughter, she basically becomes shunned and isolated despite all the stuff that she's done over the years. So it's very interesting, and it even talks about how she doesn't really, she's like, yeah, that's why I don't really use a lot of the Force.
It's almost as bad as finding out you're related to Trump.
Oh!
We had gone nearly an entire podcast without making a reference. Except for the huge part. I know that was intentional, so.
Okay.
So.
Does that answer your question?
Well, it really wasn't a question. It's just kind of like,
well, did we address your concern?
No, perfectly.
Okay.
So your last question.
All right, so my last question, and I'm kind of deviating from the more serious questions. It's kind of a point of note that ties into a dislike, but it's still a question. What the hell is the Millennium Falcon made of? Because anything else runs into a rock or a planet, let's say, and it's immediately destroyed. The Millennium Falcon bursts through a fractional refresh rate shield into atmosphere from hyperspace, slams into the planet, slides along the planet just fine, runs into rocks along the way, and 2 hours later, after they destroy the planet, or they destroy the thermal exhaust port, she's still spaceworthy. Like, that's the kind of spaceship I want. Why can't they make everything like that? Because that thing is virtually indestructible. Am I the only person that noticed that?
No, you're not the only person that noticed that, and I got 6 words for you.
For our listeners, and we've explained this before, we do a video call. Dan actually counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on his right hand. So Dan does in fact have 6 fingers on his right hand. If one of our listeners happens to be named Inigo Montoya, I found the guy. Just letting you know.
Mm-hmm. So anyways, moving along.
Your 6 words?
Han is strong with the Force.
Oh, we're back to that again.
Yeah, he uses the Force to protect his ship.
I was going to go kind of, I wasn't even saying the Force, but I was going to say Han Solo was flying, so okay, I guess we're on the same page.
Well, he is the best damn pilot in the galaxy.
Yeah.
So, theoretically. That's not Poe Dameron, I guess.
Go back to Return of the Jedi. When somebody else is flying the Millennium Falcon. When Lando is flying it. And man, I don't know what that dish is for. I hope it wasn't for TV, but
he
busted
knocks
that
thing off, and they can't get satellite TV anymore.
Yeah, Han Solo can fly into a space slug's mouth and be just fine.
Mm-hmm. Which, that's another point. What was the odds of surviving an asteroid field?
Never tell me the
nearly
odds.
3,000, a little over 3,000.
7,280 to 1 or something like that. Again, pull my card.
Yeah.
I'm getting old. But yeah, Han Solo can maneuver that, gets hit by asteroids.
Yeah, the Millennium Falcon got chunked by an asteroid because he said, "What was that?"
That wasn't a laser blast. That was something solid.
Yeah, exactly. We've already shown she's durable, but damn. I just want to know what she's made of. And why don't they make the entire fleet out of whatever she's made of?
Just to kind of go a little off subject, though, and I think I mentioned to you this personally before, but I want to add it to the podcast, make it a little moment. But, Han Solo's spacecraft is essentially a freighter, right? There's a
Yes.
YT something class freighter.
A YT class Corellian freighter. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
they just call it a...
just geeking out right here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
They just say it's a YT class, but I believe the specific designation is a YT 1300.
Okay, it's a freighter.
Yes.
So its whole purpose is to haul cargo. But, Han Solo also says it's the fastest hunk of junk in the galaxy. It's fast, it's a hot rod to him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the only thing missing is the fuzzy dice and the foxtail on the antenna.
Bam.
Bam. So...
Well, maybe it was on the dish that Lando knocked that off.
Possibly. Possibly. So, but in essence, it's like, what is the real world equivalent to that? It's a cargo vessel and it's fast. So basically, it's a Concorde that works for FedEx or UPS. Is essentially what it is.
Yeah.
And he takes it into
Yeah.
combat. So that's my thing. What is this a compare? Because I mean, you look at comparisons. I do that. It's like a Star Destroyer. Yeah, it's a big battleship,
Right.
Well, it's like a C-130,
but it's fast.
except it's fast.
Yeah, and it can maneuver in combat. So it's a Concorde with UPS on the side.
Or FedEx when it absolutely positively has to be there overnight.
It had to be because Han Solo was smuggling drugs.
Okay, yeah. Even he gets boarded sometimes, and he dumped his load of spice, which
Yeah.
I believe is a drug. So
Yeah.
there
Which,
we go.
kind of like touches on the is the Star Wars universe and the universe of Frank Herbert's Dune connected? Because was he transporting spice melange?
Well, I've asked that question before, and whoever controls the spice controls the galaxy, but they didn't navigate in the same way, so I'm gonna say no.
Maybe this galaxy they didn't need to, but
The Bene Gesserit witches were probably just Force witches by a different name.
yeah, possibly. Maybe that's the thing. The spice was a way of getting people who weren't Force sensitive to become Force sensitive.
Or getting them access to the Force.
But see, that's the thing. I mean, that's why Jabba was so pissed off that he dumped this load of spice. Because I mean, shit, that stuff's expensive.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Jabba would be quite as pissed if the spice was a load of oregano.
Fair, but it could have been, marjoram. Could have been,
Paprika.
yeah. Could have been saffron.
Yeah, that stuff is expensive,
that's a thing.
actually.
So, I've already done it once, but I'm going to do it again. It's host's prerogative. I'm going to ask one last question because I know I've asked Dan this, and I know that I've asked Christy this, but for the purposes of the podcast, I kind of want to actually get it out there. When this movie first came out, and we went to the theater and we saw it, and then we went to the theater and we saw it again, and then a couple of days later, I may or may not have gone and seen it while Christy was at work in 3D. So I saw it a few times at the theater, and one of the questions that I asked was, can Kylo Ren... Actually, it was a two-part question because I conflated the two ideas, but can Kylo Ren be forgiven by the fans for killing Han Solo? And to dovetail into that, because Kylo Ren killed his own father, which is, prequels notwithstanding, before you ever even get into what Anakin Skywalker actually did before he became Darth Vader, Kylo Ren kills his own father, and it stems from that. In the original trilogy, Darth Vader was a bad guy, and then we find out that he's Luke's father, and he wants Luke to help him rule the galaxy. So it's not really a redeeming quality, but it is sort of a, hey, I have a connection to you. You want to fix this, I want to fix this. And then in Return of the Jedi, he actually chooses Luke over the Emperor. So he has a redemption arc. The first 6 movies are Anakin Skywalker's fall and redemption. So this next set of movies, this next trilogy, if you follow the trend, is about redemption. And do you think that after killing his own father, that he can be redeemed in the eyes of the fans, in the eyes of the moviegoers? Or is killing Han Solo a fan favorite a bridge too far? Is that too much for you to give him an opportunity to redeem himself? And is it too much for you to forgive from a fan looking at a character?
I think that by the nature of a lot of Star Wars fans, I'm not going to say every one of them, but for a lot of fans and just sci-fi fans in general, I think that we would reserve our judgment to finding out what the reasons for that deed are. Because there's even some theories going around that Han actually pulled the trigger himself, so to say, because he knew that there was some deeper plot afoot or something like that, and that to help his son, this is what he had to do. And then Han, realizing that this is something that could happen, went ahead and went with it anyways. So if that be the case, then I think that people will find the act forgivable. I'm one of them. We're gonna just wait to see what happens next to see if we're gonna pass judgment or not.
Okay.
I think it depends on the redemption arc. The way it sits right now, no. I don't think they will forgive him, but depending on how the story unfolds about his redemption, then maybe. I don't know.
From a purely fan movie standpoint, if you tell me a convincing story along the way about how he could be redeemed, then I'll buy it. The difference between Kylo Ren and, let's say, Anakin Skywalker, at least in the compressed view that we have, is Kylo Ren is already on the dark side and he feels the pull to the light, which is the inverse of what we've always been taught, that you're basically sort of leaning towards the light until you're seduced by the dark side. In the Star Wars universe, at least in the movies, no one's ever been sucked to the light from the darkness. They've only had, or rather, they've had to be redeemed. Someone has had to nurture that spark of goodness within them, like Luke Skywalker did with Anakin. It will be interesting to see how that plays out, but they've already set the framework, if you will, for a redemptive arc because he was already struggling with going to the light. So I think by killing Han Solo, he was able to excise that piece, probably only temporarily. He was having that struggle. He talked to Grandpa for a bit and then killed his dad, thinking that would cut it out. And I think the next piece of it is going to be, or at least the redemptive arc story will occur in episode 9 when he realizes that killing his dad did not cut out the cancer that was the light side. That's just a way that I think they could do it. I was just curious what others thought.
I still think you're going to have hardcore fans that are not going to forgive him no matter what the story is because he killed Han Solo. Han Solo is a fan favorite, and for those of us that have grown up with the movies, that's going to be a very difficult thing for some people to do, is to forgive somebody for that, for, killing him, no matter what the story is. Maybe they might, okay, I understand, but I still don't forgive you.
Yeah, so. Well, and again, those are two separate things. So, right. Dan? What's your take?
I already expressed
you
it.
good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Well, that kind of wraps up the 3 likes, the 3 dislikes, and the 3 questions. So we will move to where does this belong on your shelf? And I'm going to let Christy answer for us. And the idea being that this is a bottom shelf crap movie, top shelf, I love this movie. And it's not just...
with the other Star Wars movies on the top shelf.
All right, there you go. And I agree with that. I can't argue with her. She makes my dinner. Actually,
no,
she doesn't.
I don't.
Actually, she doesn't. I do most of the cooking when I'm home. So, but anyway,
I'm at work.
So where does this movie belong on your shelf?
Well, for me, it has that VIP section. It's not where it's just below the pinnacle of the pyramid. So it's kind of top shelf. Where you got the Lord of the Rings trilogy, my Alien quadrilogy, Star Wars, Godzilla, all them. You know, it's like all the special movies in my heart. So it occupies that high spot. You know.
I would have been shocked and dismayed had it been elsewhere.
I did buy the Blu-ray, but not the 3D edition. I don't know why, because I like buy like the Marvel movies. I like to buy the 3D, even though 3D is kind of falling out of favor.
Mm-hmm.
But this one, I was perfectly happy with the standard Blu-ray edition. I don't know, maybe I don't think of Star Wars in 3D as I do like with Marvel or any other movie.
Well, I will say, as I'd mentioned earlier, I did sneak out and go see it in 3D at the theater. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a huge fan of 3D movies at the theater. There have been some where the parts that they really wanted you to pay attention to the 3D were pretty neat. It's a couple of extra bucks, and I don't get a couple of extra bucks worth of thrill out of it. So
yeah. The other thing I gotta say though that was really disappointing with the Blu-ray though is that the special features were kind of lackluster.
I agree.
The making of was like, yeah, okay, tell me something I haven't already heard.
Right, exactly. That wasn't already like all over the internet already.
Mm-hmm. I like the deleted scenes. Those were nice. I liked Kylo Ren in the Millennium Falcon. That was pretty cool. But the rest of it, yeah, not too terribly earth-shattering. Not what I would hope from the blockbuster that was, or is rather, Star Wars The Force Awakens. How do you feel about them?
Yeah, I wasn't overly impressed with any of it.
Yeah, you know, it's like for a movie as big as it is, you really hope that the video release, whether it be Blu-ray or whatever, you know, will have something with an equal amount of gravitas. This one, as far as a Blu-ray is concerned, you know, it's very disappointing.
Yeah, and we have the digital download as well, so, you know, we got that. But other than that, no, not that impressive. Yeah. I will be curious to hear what our listeners think, and I will also be curious to hear what their 3 likes, dislikes, and their 3 questions are, because I would really love to have this conversation on our Facebook page, which is We'll Review It Ourselves. If you search for that in the Facebook search tool, or you can comment on iTunes, Google Play. You can jump out into the email. I've heard the electronic mail is a thing now, and that is WRIOS2016mr@gmail.com. And I think those are all the ways you can get in contact with us. Did I miss anything, Dan? Oh, the YouTube channel. Don't forget that.
Yep.
And the Podbean page. And carrier pigeons.
Is that what that was?
Yes.
Oh, damn, I shouldn't have shot it.
I was going to say, did the dog chase it away? I may have missed that. Normally, this is where we would push the random magic movie button. But Dan has something else in mind for our next episode.
So I thought for the 13th episode, and 13's a lucky number for me, that we do something a little different with the format, that we're not going to talk about a specific movie. Rather, Brian and I will pick a particular genre that features very heavily on our shelves. And for me, I chose my horror movies, the horror genre, which is one of my favorite, along with sci-fi and fantasy. Horror features very heavily, so I'm going to be talking about that genre, and I'll be pointing out some specific movies that are beacons in that genre. And Brian, which genre are you going to talk about?
That's interesting, because I know we'd had this conversation in preparation for this segment, and you had mentioned musicals. And to be honest, as much as I love musicals, we don't really have that many on our shelf. I know, it's shocking. I have the ones that I care for a great deal, but the dominant portion of our collection, I think, is probably sci-fi, and I think we've kind of talked about that. So while we don't have the most musical stuff, I would kind of like to talk to musicals like we had discussed. So that's what we have and why I want to talk about it. So I will be discussing musicals and the ones that we have and why we have them.
All right, so that's our next podcast.
We hope you enjoyed the conversation. We hope you provide us with some feedback. And I want to thank Christy for jumping into the podcast with us with both feet and a ham sandwich. She seemed to really fit in, which was a lot of fun. I appreciate that. And thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Hey, great to have you. Nice little different aspect of the conversation. Putting Brian in his place every now and again.
As every good wife should.
Yeah. Thanks again to Christy for being here, and Dan.
I will show you the dark side.
Thanks everybody for listening, and may the force be with you.